everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the Power Woman Summit presented by Rap Woman. My name's Kelly Mealy, and you probably recognize me from Netflix series Bling Empire. Today we'll be hearing from actors, writers, upcoming filmmakers, and even some real-life superheroes. As a reminder, you can go back and rewatch any of your favorite moments from these sessions at rapwoman.com and click Power Woman Summit. On this site, you can also check out Power Woman Summit Marketplace, where you'll discover an incredible collection of vendors, artwork, and experiential activations. At 2 p.m. Pacific today, we'll kick off today's mentorship sessions, and for those of you who upgraded to your mentorship tickets, you should have received a confirmation email with your signed date, time, and mentor. This year's mentorship program is presented by Amazon Studios. Throughout the day, please reach out and connect and chat with one another via our Rap Connect Slack channel. If you registered for the conference, you should have received an invitation of this in your inbox. It's also still not too late to sign up. You can register at rapwoman.com under the tab Power Woman Summit. We also encourage you to share your thoughts and findings on social media or using the hashtag Power Woman Summit. Feel free to tag us at The Rap Woman on Twitter and Rap Woman on Instagram. And don't forget to sign up for the Rap Woman newsletter on the Rap Woman website and subscribe to Rap Woman podcast on Rap, on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, a huge thank you to the Power Woman Summit event sponsors. We appreciate you making this event possible. Now, before we jump into our program, I wanted to share some of my own personal thoughts. The Power Woman Summit is bringing together women from all corners of our community. As a female entrepreneur, investor, and film and television producer, this event speaks true to my heart. I've always done my best to pave my own path and find a career that I'm passionate about. This has led me on many ventures, from investing in startups to talent management and now producing. I've since started my own production company, Web Pause Media, and continue to seek out cost-based projects that ring true to myself. However, like many others, my path wasn't always easy, and encountering challenges was unpreventable. I've learned firsthand about obstacles women have to face every day in workplaces. It has taught me as a community we need to stand together and support one another. With this in mind, I want to acknowledge how honored I am to be a part of the Power Woman Summit and be here today to introduce some amazing women who surround us every day. Now, I'm excited to kick off today's program with you because this morning we're hearing from New York Attorney General Letitia James, who just announced she's running for governor of New York. Last week at an evening honoring Power Woman Summit and Changemakers of 2021, Letitia James was joined by award-winning journalist Soledad O'Brien for a live virtual discussion about women's leadership in politics. Let's take a look.
Thank you to everybody who is tuning in to the Spotlight conversation with me and the New York State Attorney General, Tish James. Really, only the rap can create the warmth and dynamism of a live event, but virtually. So once again, because we're all dealing with COVID-19, so a big thank you to the rap for having me and for allowing me to do this conversation. The theme is of this entire conversation and conference is represent. And I was kind of shocked to learn that Tish James is the first woman of color to hold statewide office in New York and the first woman ever to be elected Attorney General. She is currently running to be the first female African-American governor, not just of New York, which is where she's running, of course, but if she wins, she'd be the first in any state. So please join me in welcoming Tish James. Do I call you Madam Attorney General? I feel like I call you Tish. What do you prefer?
Tish.
Fantastic. Well,
Everyone
thanks for
calls me
joining
Tish.
me.
Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to have you at the Power Woman Summit. And there's a number of young women as well, because this is about conversation and mentoring and learning about leadership as well. So I guess my first question for you would be about these hundreds of young women who are taking part. What's your message to them? You've had a very storied career through politics.
For New York women, and particularly young women, it's really about change. It's about recognizing and understanding their passion, and it's about following their dream. And it's also about breaking through glass ceilings and let individuals know that when women lead, things happen, things change. We transform lives. All throughout my career, as a former public defender, as a staff attorney in Albany, as a city council member, as a public advocate, and now as the Attorney General, it's about exhibiting and demonstrating courage and affecting change in the lives of others. And it's about recognizing that you have to speak truth to power, and you have to think about others before you think about yourself. You have to think about all of those young little girls that I've met on the streets of New York City and all of upstate New York, who have dreams and who have passions, but they're concerned, they're afraid, they live in the shadow of others. And I tell them to live for themselves and to think big and to think beyond New York State and to be on the full stage and just to demonstrate their power. And that's what they continue to do each and every time. So I am honored and privileged to be on the show, and I'm honored and privileged to meet so many young girls who say that I've inspired them. But if I can make a difference in the life of another young child, then I've done my part.
Why are you running to be governor of New York?
Because New Yorkers need change, because the status quo will not do. You know, it's really critically important that as someone who has demonstrated courage and leadership and taken on tough fights all throughout my career, that those young girls that you speak of, that they know that they see me, and more importantly, that they see a governor of the state of New York who's not afraid, who's fearless. And she's fearless because she really wants to see change in the life of others, because she wants to build out the middle class, because she wants to recover from COVID fairly, because she wants all voices to be heard, because she wants an environment where we have clean water and clean energy, and a clean air for individuals to enjoy, and because she wants to build out a middle class, and because we want to transform a criminal justice system which is broken. For all those reasons, that's why I'm running for the governor of the state of New York, because the status quo cannot do, will not do, and we must recover again in a more fair and balanced approach and manner in the state of New York.
Do you feel like you've accomplished everything you set out to do and you want to do and you should do as Attorney General? So,
as the Attorney General, I've taken on some big fights. Taken on a previous administration, a Donald Trump administration, that was a real threat to our democracy and continues to be a threat to our democracy. We've taken on the NRA. We've taken on the NRA because the NRA is a not-for-profit in the state of New York, and because they turned the NRA into a personal piggy bank, not for its original mission, but basically to enrich the lives of others. We've taken on the environment, protecting, again, water and air and energy. We've represented the rights of women, reproductive rights. We've led in the nation in filing amicus briefs on behalf of like-minded attorney generals who believe in reproductive choice and who believe that a woman's decision to have an abortion should be between her doctor, and her faith. And we've taken on big tech, and we've taken on the opioid crisis. Again, reaching a settlement of $1.5 billion to individuals who are struggling in the throes of addiction. And there's more to be taken on in the state of New York.
So why not stay and continue on as Attorney General?
Because there's so many challenges in the state of New York, and what we need is bold and brave and courageous leadership in the state of New York. And as the Attorney General, I've seen some of the problems with state agencies. I've seen that they've been underfunded, understaffed. We've had to pay out millions, if not billions, in dollars as a result of agencies, the failure of agencies, again, to have leadership because they are understaffed and because there has been no vision on a statewide level. And what we need now more than ever is a governor, such as myself, who will put forth change, will put forth brave and bold leadership, and who will respect the workforce of the state of New York and will deliver for New Yorkers and build out our middle class and provide jobs for New Yorkers who are struggling right now as we recover from COVID.
Do you have a guiding principle, a thing that you sort of always come back to?
My North Star is simple justice, sweet and simple justice. It was that mantra that led me as a city council member to challenge Mayor Bloomberg when he wanted to overturn the term limits. When I uncovered the biggest scandal in the city of New York, known as City Time, and we recovered $500 million for taxpayers in the city of New York. As the public advocate, when we passed a law because we believe equal pay for equal work, and we banned salary history so that women can be paid the same as men for basically doing the same job. When we sued the City of New York, the Department of Education, on behalf of special needs children. And as the Attorney General, taking on the NRA, taking on the environment, standing up to Donald Trump, and standing up against the most powerful governor in the state of New York on behalf of young women.
So, Andrew Cuomo, some media outlets have seemed to indicate that your investigation into the former governor might have been politically motivated, meaning investigation, he steps down, and now you're running basically for the job he had.
This report was conducted by two independent attorneys whose resumes are beyond reproach. And it's unfortunate that the former governor is not and has not taken responsibility for his own conduct. These two attorneys who conducted this investigation did it based on the facts, an analysis of the facts and the application of the law. And they concluded that, in fact, the former governor, Andrew Cuomo, his administration was toxic, and that Andrew Cuomo himself engaged in sexual harassment. It's also important that individuals understand that the previous report that we conducted, that my office conducted, charges that the Cuomo administration undercounted the number of individuals who died in nursing homes. It's unfortunate that the former governor refuses to take responsibility for any of his conduct. And the document, the report, both reports, the nursing home report and the independent report, basically speaks for itself. And I stand behind those reports. I stand behind the fact that vulnerable individuals in nursing homes died as a result of failed leadership, and two, that the women that were part of the investigation, again, were victims of Governor Cuomo's conduct and his behavior, and I believe those women. And I would hope that Governor Cuomo would move on. And it's important also that individuals understand and they compare Governor Cuomo's investigation that he conducted of Eliot Spitzer, as well as the former Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. His investigations were all internal. His investigations were done by his own staff. His investigations were done in a limited period, and then he too announced that he was going to run for higher office. So now he wants to turn the spotlight on me. I'd be more than happy to compare my record and my reports against the former governor who continues to hide behind an attorney and who continues to engage again in hyperbole and charge politics. Nothing can be further from the truth. Politics stops at the door of the office of Attorney General.
Can you talk about the Trump investigation?
What I can tell you is that there are two investigations that have been reported. There's a civil investigation with respect to properties that the former president owns and operates, properties that were devalued for the purposes of taxation and properties that were overvalued for the purposes of getting benefits from banks and insurance companies. And then on the criminal side, working with the Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance with respect to, in fact, whether or not he engaged in any illegality. As you know, his chief financial officer was indicted, and our investigation with Cy Vance continues.
So beyond continues, can you give us any more details on that?
No, because it's an ongoing investigation. That criminal action is still ongoing, and we're still working with the Manhattan District Attorney. There
seem to be a lot of people from Brooklyn who are running to be governor. I mean, like, it sounds funny, but it's true. I mean, we have the current governor is going to try to keep the position, Governor Hochul, the public advocate, Jumaane Williams, Mayor Bill de Blasio has decided to run for governor as well. Why do you think you're better than, listen, I can name some that you're definitely better than off the top of my head, but I'll let you say, why you? What's your sell and selling point to a person who just doesn't know who they want to support?
So let me just say that Governor Hochul is from Buffalo. Mayor de Blasio.
No, I know she's not from Brooklyn.
And Tom Suozzi just entered the race. He just entered the race about an hour and a half ago, and he's from Long Island.
Yes, I'm from Long Island, so I know.
But this is really this is not a race between Governor Hochul and I. This is really a race for the vision of the state of New York. Who has the vision, who has the ability and the courage and the experience to get things done.
Why is yours better than hers?
Again, as a former public defender, as someone who worked in state government, I was counsel to the corporations, authorities, and commissions, counsel to children and families. As a former city council member, serving 10 years, again, going up against some powerful interest in the state of New York. As the public advocate of the state of New York, I demonstrated courage, and as the Attorney General, I've taken on powerful interest. And so what we need now more than ever is, again, fundamental and transformational change in the lives of New Yorkers. And I have the experience and the record to prove it and to demonstrate it. And someone who is, again, fearless when it comes to taking on these powerful interests, which continue to hold back New Yorkers. Wages are stagnated. Right now, New Yorkers are concerned about inflation. They're concerned about prices at the gas pump. And we need to confront each and every issue because we need to grow our middle class more than ever, and we need to create middle class jobs so that individuals can sustain families. And as the governor, I will do that because I've demonstrated the ability to do that all throughout my public career.
Governor Hochul became the first female governor because obviously Governor Cuomo stepped down. I'm curious if that presents a bigger challenge to you that for people who sometimes can't see women in certain roles, now she's in, right? And does that make it harder for you? Does it make it easier for you in the race?
Women basically get things done, but the issue really is about, just issues facing New Yorkers every day. And so each and every day I wake up focusing on issues that affect New Yorkers. And what I heard during the holidays is how, Thanksgiving dinner costs New Yorkers more. What I heard is regarding salaries that cannot sustain families. What I heard about is prices at the gas pump. I heard about inflation. I heard about concern about COVID. People are suffering from COVID fatigue in the state of New York. And what we need, obviously, is to move this state forward, again, in a way that can transform our government. Government needs to be more public-facing, and they need to address the felt needs of New Yorkers. And it's been a long time since we've done that. And that's why we need fundamental change in the state of New York. And based upon my record and my ability to get things done as the next governor of the state of New York, I have the experience and the record to move that agenda forward.
A couple of weeks ago, I would have said, listen, I feel like, in fact, I think I did say, I feel like we're coming out the other side of COVID. Now, of course, there's a new strain that's been identified. Not really clear at this moment exactly how potentially terrible it could be. What do you support in terms of minimizing the damage that a new strain could have? I mean, Times Square is just opening up to tourists, many of them, by the way, not wearing masks, I gotta tell you.
So, listen, the vaccination rates in upstate New York continue to concern me. And most recently, I issued a statement with respect to the vaccination rates. And we need to use the largesse of government to purchase home test kits for individuals all throughout the state of New York and provide them to businesses as we recover from COVID-19. We also need to have trusted and authentic voices talk about vaccinations, which is absolutely critical to our recovery. But it's also important that we recognize the hesitation that exists given the history of medical experimentation in this country. We also need to address those rural counties in upstate New York where transportation needs continue to be a challenge in the state of New York. And so we need to, again, address the high rate of vaccination, the high rate of infection rates in upstate New York. Everyone tends to focus on New York City, and I am from New York City and love New York City. But if you go in upstate New York, as I traveled, again, seeking to heal New York and seeking to provide resources to those who are struggling with struggling from the opioid epidemic, we need to address COVID-19 and its infection rate in upstate New York, which is challenging our economy. And that's what we should do, and that's what I would do as governor of the state of New York.
How many years have you been in politics now?
Oh, my goodness. It's been a while. I've dedicated my life to public service. As someone growing up in Brooklyn, I grew up with humble beginnings. My mother and father who hail from the South with limited education, my father who was a maintenance person, and my mother who scrubbed floors and then ultimately worked for the telephone company. I mean, they instilled in us hard work, but they also instilled in us public service and the ability to give back. And when you give back and when you think about others before you think about yourself, that is when you do your greatest job. And all throughout my life and all throughout my career, it's about, again, improving the lives of others, particularly children and particularly individuals who are struggling under the weight of poverty. and all throughout my career, whether it was as public defender, as a staff attorney, as a city council member, as a public advocate, now as Attorney General. It's been giving back all that I have benefited from.
What do you think has been the biggest lesson that you've learned from politics? I've spent my career interviewing politicians, and there's never been one where I thought, like, whoa, I want to get into politics at the end of the interview. I was like, mostly I'm like, oh, politics seems just extremely stressful and sometimes extremely miserable.
Yeah, politics has gotten a bad rap. Listen, in New York State, scandal after scandal after scandal, and we've become the laughingstock, and it's unfortunate. It is a noble and honorable profession. To witness before your eyes something that I was responsible for and joined with others, providing universal school lunch for children. Children who came to me and said, Tish, I stand on a line where I'm stigmatized. I stand on a line which is known as the po' folks line. Kids who often hid and were ashamed to stand on that line. They had a card in order to be eligible for free lunch. And individuals who, were not poor were able to pay for their lunch. I wanted to get rid of those lines. I did not want any child stigmatized. The only thing I wanted to hear was bellies grumbling so that we can feed all children. And working again and going up against the mayor of the city of New York, Mayor de Blasio, we were able to effect universal school lunch in the city of New York. That's something that I would like to effect all throughout the state of New York. Seeing affordable housing for individuals who are struggling, dealing with individuals who are struggling with mental illness, removing over 2,500 guns from the streets of New York State, and going after criminals and individuals who will peddle drugs and arms on the streets of New York State, working with law enforcement. That's a proud moment for me, and that's something I'm really proud of. And that's something that I will be proud of and push on, and push aggressively on as the governor of the great state of New York.
We started with your message for some of the younger people who are attending, because there's a lot of lessons in leadership and also mentoring that happens in this conference. But I'm curious for the women here. You know, it's a powerful woman summit. So talk to me about your messaging for powerful women. What advice do you give to the powerful women who are watching?
So whenever you step into a room, own the room. Make sure people respect you. Make sure you create a seat at the table. You know, I remember Shirley Chisholm's quote, who basically said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. I want to change that a little bit. I want to create my own table and bring my own friends to the table. All of my friends, everyone, Black, white, Latino, Asian, women, men, it really doesn't matter. All voices should be heard at the seat of government, and they should recognize the power of government. And they should recognize that now, at this point, this transformational point in the history of New York, we can affect change in the lives of others. And we can do it with a visionary, someone with bold ideas, but more importantly, someone who has a record to get things done. Politicians often talk the talk. All you have to do is look at my record, and it speaks for itself. Each and every time, people have underestimated me, and we've continued to overperform. Again, changing the lives of others, and again, building out a middle class where people can sustain families. That's my vision for New York. And with infrastructure funds and the Build Back Better funds that are coming, we can do that here in the state of New York, focusing on upstate New York and rural counties where individuals are struggling with poverty, where they don't have economic engines, where the only game in town, unfortunately, is opioid and drug addiction, where people are dying from overdoses as a result of fentanyl. We can and must do better. But it takes a visionary, and it takes someone who's fearless. And again, it takes someone like Letitia James, a strong woman who's not afraid to say it, speak it, and do it.
Think you're going to win?
Yes, because over 20 years, I've won each and every election, behind in the polls and behind in money. Been fueled by individuals like women around humble tables who basically said, we've got to vote for Tish James. I've been fueled by people power, a grassroots movement, never by money. And I know that there are individuals in this race who've raised tons of money from individuals, but we need to speak to campaign finance and repealing Citizens United, because there's just too much money in politics. And what we need are small donations and individuals who care about our government, and individuals who are not beholden to big money lobbyists and or big money lawyers, but are beholden to women who sit around a table each and every day struggling with their bills, families who struggle with paying groceries and concerned about educational outcomes. We need more elected officials and more public servants who are truly servants, who basically serve others and not themselves. That's the record of Letitia James, and that's how she's going to win.
Letitia James is the Attorney General of the state of New York, and she is running to be governor. It's so nice to talk to you.
It's
Thanks
nice
for
to talk
joining
to you
us.
as well.
You bet.
Thank you so much.
Wow, what an amazing woman. Up next, be sure to check out our sessions across 3 themes: storytellers, boss mode, and change makers. Today, we'll hear from leading actors from your favorite film and series, and the writers behind your favorite jokes and lines. We'll also have a panel of upcoming filmmakers as part of the Telling Our Stories film contest presented by Starz Lionsgate. Stay tuned as we'll be announcing the winner of the film contest. You can view these short films on the Power Women Summit Marketplace. On the Marketplace, you can also view the amazing photographs from photojournalist and IWMF Courage winner Vanessa Charlo, who's joined by the Rap and Rap Woman founder Sharon Waxman for a truly engaging conversation in today's program. Today, we're also joined by women who are superheroes on screen, behind the scenes, and in everyday life, plus women who are breaking barriers in their industry. From Olympic gymnast Ping Ping Lee to Zaira Gorecki, one of the first people with an amputation to be featured in a recurring role on a network television. And of course, on the Power Women Summit website, you can access all of our sessions on demand. Feel free to pick and choose your own schedule. Just visit rapwoman.com and click on Power Women Summit to check out a full breakdown. And don't forget, if you upgraded your mentorship ticket, you should have received a confirmation email with your signed date, time, and mentor. This year's mentorship program is presented by Amazon Studios. Now enjoy the rest of your day 2 of the Power Women Summit.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alysia Reiner. You may know me as Fig on Orange is the New Black, or Sunny on Better Things, or soon Catherine from Shining Vale on Starz this spring. But today I am a host, and I'm so excited to be hosting this Power Women Summit Actors Roundtable, Women Who Lead, with these badass women. I'm so excited. So we're going to start by just introducing our panelists, and the order I was given was starting with Ritu Arya. Did I say that right?
You did. Ritu Arya. That's my name.
Excellent.
Hi.
Hi, Ritu. Ritu,
Hey.
you may know from Red Notice, also the Umbrella Academy. I personally fell in love with her on Feel Good as Lava. Do you want to say hello? Anything you want to say to start?
No, I'm so honored to be speaking with you guys. So thanks so much for having me.
Yay. And next we have Alexandra Daddario. If anyone out there hasn't seen White Lotus, I just haven't met them yet. So you probably know her from that, also The Girlfriend Experience or Why Women Kill. Hello, Alexandra.
Hello. I'm so excited to be part of this and have a great conversation. So thank you guys for having me.
Yay. And next we have Regina Hall from 9 Perfect Strangers. I was obsessed with your character in that. Also, you may know her from Black Monday or Insecure, The Hate U Give. Extraordinary actress. So excited to be having this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with all these amazing women on the chat. Who I love all of your work. So great.
Lily Rabe. I have not seen The Tender Bar yet. I'm so excited, but you probably also know her from American Horror Story or The Undoing or Underground Railroad, or The First Lady. I'm dying to see. It's so excited to be here with you too.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be in this incredible company.
Yay, yay. And Angelica Ross, another American Horror Story Sisters here. You may also know her from Pose. And I first fell in love with her with my friend Jen Richards' series, Her Story.
Oh my goodness, you know about Her Story? Yes. Well, listen, I am so excited to be here because I feel like the baby of the group, even though I'm still a woman of a certain age, but maybe baby in the industry of the group. And so I'm just so honored to be around so many powerful, amazing leads in this industry. So thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Karen Pittman, who I personally love on the morning show, but you may also know her from Luke Cage. My husband loves you on that. And I'm so excited that she's on the new Sex and the City series, Just Like That.
Hi, guys. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for keeping me company during the COVID pandemic because I watched all of your work and it was fantastic. Sorry.
Amazing. We'll get to COVID later. So I wanted to start by asking you guys, I know I get asked a lot, how did you get started in the business? And you're welcome to answer that if you like. But one of my favorite questions that people ask me is, when did you realize oh, I think this is gonna work. I think this is gonna be a thing. For me, it was when I was on the subway with my 2-year-old and she learned the word badass when this woman came up to me and she's like, "You're such a badass on that show." And my little 2-year-old's like, "What's a badass, mommy?" So whoever wants to jump in first, what was that moment when you were like, "Oh, I think this might actually be happening"?
The moment for me where I was like, oh, I think I fucked around and made it was when I walked into the first day of our table read on the morning show. And I saw Reese and Jennifer Aniston, who I'd watched for years on Friends. And she says, I know your work and I'm so thrilled that you're going to be doing this with us. And I was like, my work? How could you know my work? That was one of those moments where I thought, I have been working a long time and people have actually noticed the work that I've done. And that felt really great. That kind of acknowledgement was great.
Yeah, it's like that recognized by your sisters thing. Yeah.
Or as someone who's totally inspired you for years and years and years. And for her to even know who you are felt really kind of surreal and cool.
I kind of knew for me, there were a couple times when I knew and then I thought I was wrong, how someone's career, it's just and so I was a child actor. So I started when I was 11 or 12. So I was doing commercials and it was kind of like an extracurricular activity. And then I booked a soap. And when I booked the soap when I was 16, I was like, I'm an actress. I made it. And then of course I was fired from the soap. And then I was like, oh no, this isn't going to work. And it's that little bit of the up and down. And I think it wasn't until I was in my mid or late 20s when I really started to feel like, okay, this is something I'm going to be doing the rest of my life. And I had already been doing it my whole life, but it's strange that you have that on and off feeling. But it's amazing when you finally realize you've put in all these years and it was there the whole time.
I think I always still wonder. I always am surprised, I still don't feel but I mean, I've been working, but for a long time, I used to be like, I wonder if I'm going to work again. And it would always depend on how much time there was. Or now I feel like, well, maybe a certain group of people know me. So I'm always shocked when someone outside of who I think would recognize me recognizes me. And then I don't want to assume that because I recognize them, they recognize me, because then they're like, no, I mean, not to be racist, but I usually know Black people will recognize me because I know maybe they've seen it. So probably when other, groups, you know what I mean, are like, oh, I love your work, then I'm like, oh, wow, they saw it. So it still kind of goes back and forth. I'm never really, I don't know, I'm never really solid, but I think, or they still call me Regina King sometimes. So, I don't know. I can't wait to have that feeling of like,
Wow.
I've made it. I do feel like I've certainly, I certainly can see transitions.
That feels like that's like part of the whole power women thing, that you're always striving for more.
Yeah.
Right? Like you really always want to, I'm ready for that mountaintop, or maybe I can get to that. Right.
For all levels.
Yeah.
I love that. And also being a power woman to me is being willing to say like, yeah, I don't feel it today. Like I feel fully invisible and like a piece of like gum on someone's shoe. Like that's the truth of being a power woman, is like, you have to admit some days you feel like crap and you feel like nobody has any clue who you are or cares for that matter. No matter, I imagine no matter how famous you get, I don't know. I hope Meryl doesn't feel that way, but I imagine.
Oh, I have Meryl last night and she said, oh, I love you. The fact that Meryl Streep knew who I was, maybe last night was the moment.
Yeah, that was the moment, dude. That was the moment. That was the moment for sure.
That's because in 9 Perfect Strangers, you came for Meryl's neck, honey. You came for her neck in 9 Perfect Strangers, I'm telling you. I think for me, the moment where I started to be like, oh, okay, this I think is hitting, is when Pose. I mean, there were different moments that were happening that added up. But when it really was like, okay, I think this is about to be something, was when I wrapped on season 2 of Pose, and people were not happy about my character being killed off the show, around the world. And it was like a interesting wave that I felt from a lot of people. But then in addition to that, when I was supposed to kind of just smoothly transition over to American Horror Story, I actually turned down the offer initially. And that's when I knew that I was in a position to say, like, I'm okay waiting for exactly the right moment or exactly the right thing. I'm not jumping at things just because I feel centered and powerful. And when I feel like that, that means I get to make decisions not based off of a place of wanting or lack or anything else, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page about value. I know that it's really hard for women, especially Black women, especially Black trans women, to communicate the value that I think that I deserve in this contract or for this role. And so the first couple offers I said no to, until the offer came up to where I wanted it to be. Then I was like, okay, yes. But for me as a Black trans woman, I'm just speaking from that space, to say no is when I feel like I've made it, when I'm able to say no and feel comfortable in that.
So that is such a beautiful answer. And it actually brings me to the next question I wanted to ask you guys, which is, as power women, women don't talk about money a lot, and they don't talk about money to each other a lot. And I think it's something that we need to change so that we can empower each other, that we need to be more transparent about it. But I'll also say, like, Angelica, that you just gave extraordinary advice to the audience. Does anyone else have anything that they want to share, advice, wisdom, their experience in their career about valuing themselves, about embracing their value, about their relationship with money as an artist? Because it's a rare thing what we do, and we never know what, the next job, and how do we plan? And Are there any pieces of specific advice that you want to share, or experiences or stories like that?
I had an experience with it was with a representative of mine that I think about so much. I was in my 20s and I was doing a show and I was the lead of the show. There were two sort of co-leads that were both men. And I think about this moment so often when she said to me, I was sort of asking, you know, they offered me whatever money. I had been doing theater. I made enough money to pay for my rent stabilized apartment. I never really, so any amount of TV money felt like so much money to me at the time. But I remember saying sort of casually, like, oh, I don't know, is this thing I can, what are the guys making? Is it similar? And she said, you shouldn't even think about that because they're men.
Wow.
And this is it's a while ago, but I have so much shame about now how quickly I retreated from the conversation, and just any feeling of authority or curiosity or engagement just evaporated. And now I'm just so grateful that the conversation is being had in the way that it is being had. And I sort of, I do go back to that moment often and try to forgive my 23-year-old self for how quickly I went right under a rock and apologized for even asking the question. And so I just, I'm just so grateful that I feel like there is so much more oxygen in the room, and that conversation is not only being had over and over, but it's our responsibility to keep asking those questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's also, go ahead. You too.
Oh, well, I was going to say just along those lines of, I feel like I guess I've been quite lucky because I've got, I think, a really amazing team of strong women. And I think that we just can't, take that for granted, that our team is helping us with stuff like that, And so it's not something I think I've had to really worry about, because I've got these amazing women that are like on it with what they would accept, before saying yes for a role in regards to equal pay and that kind of thing. So yeah.
And to add to that, and I don't have women, I have mostly male team, but they are so strong and great. But in addition to that, I think you can't be afraid to pass. You have to be okay with losing it to really discover your worth. And there are points in your career where you're just like, I just want to work, and you want to build the resume. And so you'll be like, I'm going to take it. But then there's a moment where you're like, but they won't get me. They'll get someone else. And I'm not saying it won't be amazing, but it won't be what I offer. And it's your first pass and your first no is kind of when you start to really recognize your worth, because it's always scary the first time, especially if you want the part. They know you want the part, so they're going to offer you a little bit of money, but that's kind of a part of the game. And then it's really your team that's going to say, we have to pass. Like, we're beyond negotiation. And it's when when you're like, I won't use an expletive, but when you're like, whatever that, forget that, and you pass. I think that's a very empowering moment. Whether they come back or not, I feel like you're like, I passed. I'm unemployed. I did it. But it's still empowering to feel like you have a choice in to know that you have a choice in what you're going to do and what you're going to earn or settle for, however you view it in the scope of your life. I think it's very personal, but I think you have to have the choice.
I totally agree with that. I think that it was part of and Lily brought up something that happens, I think, a lot with theater actresses, for sure, that we are just so grateful to get out of the theater space where you don't make a lot of money and you step into TV or film, but also I think that women of color are steeped in the tradition of marginalization, of just being so grateful, specifically trans women, that they have been given the opportunity to even express themselves, right? And so a real sitting in your power means knowing that not only do you deserve that space, but you also are worthy of being paid that money. And I think one of the ways I battled it as an actress is to you know, ask for transparency, to be transparent about what I'm making, and to link up arms with the people around me who I think can make a difference, if that's other actors or actresses or, you know, people at the studios or in the production that are interested in not just, you know, equity on camera or behind the camera, but our equity, you know, Black Lives Matter, meaning Black paychecks matter. Do you know what I mean? Like all of that matters. And I think that's one of the ways we, as women, you know, exert power in an industry where systemic oppression is rampant.
I love that. And I will just say, you know, if you have an amazing team, gorgeous. But one of the things that I find, whether you have a great team or not, is having those questions to ask, you know, and one of those questions for me is it most favored nations? Like, I want to get paid well, but is everybody getting paid well? Like, that's really important to ask. Like, am I getting paid as much as the men? Is the Black woman getting paid as much as me? You know, that's really important that we all take that responsibility. So, and then, you know, sort of a PS question to that, when you do say no and you are feeling, oh, that's scary, are there any ways you talk to yourself or any tools you have to get through that time, to have the faith that you are worthy and that next thing is coming?
You know, personally, what I'm experiencing, and I don't know how this is for other folks, but look, I'm one of the theater kids. I came up from first grade all the way through school, theater, community theater, school theater, all the things, music, movements, you know, voice, all the things from theater, everything. So I consider myself a true artist and true to my craft, and just, I love what I do. And I have come into the industry, like I've done a lot of things outside the industry for a long time, and which had to include just me advocating for my right to exist and have a job without being discriminated against or all these different things. So when I come into Hollywood, what I know is Hollywood can't give me more than I've given myself in ways, the kind of like strength and power and confidence. Like no contract is ever going to give me the power, the true power. So I feel like sometimes folks like India Moore, sometimes our names and our voices have been in the media in ways that have been like conflict or like kind of challenging for folks. And some folks look at us like, don't you think you should shut up? Like, you're not worried about somebody taking your check or doing this or no more opportunities. And my thing is, I don't want it if it's not real. I don't want it if I have to sell my authenticity or sell, you know, certain things. So I think what really helped me in that space was really understanding the dynamics of this game. Like, the power never comes from outside of yourself. So the power is in patience. The power is in discernment. The power is in all these different things. So when I got like say for instance, the American Horror Story offer, I told myself, oh, I don't want to do horror. Like, I'm scared of horror. I don't really want to do it. So in essence, like that really kind of gave me the essence to say no, because I didn't really want to see myself in horror. So if it wasn't right, then it was easier for me to do that. And I knew that the universe would take care of me. And even if it wasn't another job, I am the brand. It doesn't always, I'll be honest with you, I make good money acting. But I think I make so much more money minding my business, the business that is Angelica Ross, and understanding the value of that off camera when it comes to hooking up with other brands who are also trying to move the conversation forward. I know that was a lot said.
No, I just want to just add to that. I was having this conversation on set the other day, and I realized maybe just during COVID for sure, where we had to be very conscientious about the choices we were making as to whether or not to work, and get checks, and et cetera. That the real power isn't actually in the money. The power is in being able to tell the story you want to tell and to be able to tell it well, right? And if you have an environment to flourish around you, you're respected, you're getting paid well. That is where the best story comes out of me. Do you know what I mean?
I agree. I think it's very empowering to be able to make money on your own terms. And as you become more successful, you get all kinds of offers, and it can be a little dizzying and confusing. Like, wow, this is so much money. Who am I to turn this down? Who am I? I need this. I don't have a man to take care of me, or I don't, whatever, like these weird thoughts that, I had when I was single. I have to be independent. And that I've always believed in that, and that's wonderful, but you can do that without sacrificing your creativity or your brand or the things that you really love. And so there's a compromise you make where you say, who am I to turn this kind of money down? This would be great for me. But you also, on the flip side of fighting for what you deserve to be paid for the projects you do want to do, have to be able to say no to the things that you feel in your gut aren't right, and then become empowered by the kinds of things that do pay you, that you can create your own brand and feel proud that you're doing something that empowers you financially. And it's a difficult line to walk, but I think a lot of that is what you guys are all saying. It's stepping into your power and understanding your worth and knowing that you're receiving these offers, not because you're never going to work again, which always goes through our heads, but because you are in a place where you deserve it and that there's better things to come for you. And that can be a hard thing to do when you first start out.
Yeah.
I have really good friends. I have really good girlfriends who are actors, and they're really supportive, and they really, during hard times when you're like, oh, I'm not, or I passed, they just remind you, that like, oh, I felt that way, or they tell you, wonderful things about you, and that's really helpful to have a community of whoever they are. Could be a husband, a spouse, a best friend, but like friends, but especially with me, I think there's kind of this thing where women aren't great to other women. And that's not true. I have really amazing friends who are actors. It doesn't mean that they're not like, bitch, I wanted the job, but in that and beyond that, they're still able to remind me in difficult spots of doubt or insecurity, of like, whatever my worth in the business, but really my worth outside of it. And I think it's beautiful too. It's another way that women, we remind each other of not just a financial worth, but a purposeful worth and a purposeful walk. And I feel really blessed to have like really great women who are actors, or, in like who are close, who I can be really vulnerable with.
I love that you brought that up, Regina, because that was one thing, for me, it's about remembering that my worth isn't just my work, that we are worthy human beings, whether we're working or not. And I love what you said, Karen, about choosing your stories, because, for me, at a certain point, I decided to produce, and I produced a couple movies in order to create more stories about women, hiring more women, paying them more than the men. And, one of them was called Equity, and about women on Wall Street and about women's relationship to money. Ritu, I feel like you wanted to say something.
I did want to say something. What was I going to say? Oh, that was it. So I was going to say that I don't think any one of us would be sitting here talking to each other if what drove us was money to become like artists and actors. So, you know, it's interesting to be so lucky and so fortunate to even be having this conversation. You know, I think you have to just love what you're doing, and the fact that you get paid on top of that is just like the dream. That's like the bonus. That means you can do it more often. It means you can spend more of your time doing the thing that you love, right? I mean, I've actually only in the last few years have been able to live as an actor and not have to have another job, you know, like since doing screen work. I was doing like plays, like off West End plays, children's plays for like the beginning of my career, and I was working in a call center. I was doing tutoring. I was doing that god awful door-to-door selling, you know, and so the fact, as soon as I was able to not have to have another job, was just like, I'm like in heaven. This is incredible. So then to be having conversations like, okay, equal pay and things like that, like it's incredible. And so I think,
I think that's part of what makes it a hard conversation, because I think maybe we all would do it for free, really. Like if we can't, we have to make a living, you know? So it's this weird navigation of like, I am deeply passionate about this, and you know, my agents would never want me to say I would do it for free, but I kind of would. And I honestly, and I mouths to feed, you know, like I have to pay my rent.
But I honestly think the difference in that is like I've recognized my value in such a way where I feel like I get to decide who to charge what. So for instance, there are Black trans-led organizations who can't afford to bring me in the building. But I go and I bring myself there. But the other folks, I'm charging a little bit more. I think it's about assessing the environment, because sometimes we take on those projects that don't have big budgets and we know they don't. They're friends of ours who are putting things together every way that they can. Then there's other people who got budgets, but they ain't trying to give you part of the budget. So it's just kind of like one kind of discerning, I think, those spaces as well where you should push.
I love that you brought that up, because it really is like, there are different rules for different situations, and you can't, like, it's not linear. It's more of a, you know, it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride. And in that sort of conversation, when you think about, like, when I did the Power Women Summit a couple years ago, they asked us all, like, what's your advice for your younger self? So if you guys want to share, like, is there any advice for your younger self, or any advice for young people watching this? What are some things that you've learned that you're like, oh, I wish I knew that?
You're going to be scared. And that's no matter what business or career or whatever you choose to be, a mom, a this, or that. It's going to be scary when you're young because everything is unknown, but that's okay. And that's totally normal. I think I thought that because I was so scared that I had to somehow do something else, or my self-doubt and insecurity, which is very common in young women, unfortunately, that spoke to me so much that sometimes I really doubted myself. And I wish I hadn't, but it's all sort of part of the process. But I think as much as you can ignore that and just know that you're doing something that you love, whatever it is, you follow what you love. Don't worry about money. Don't worry about doubt and fear. If you follow what you love and perfect it to the best of your ability and work as hard as you can, all the answers will appear to you. So there's not really, you don't need to follow that fear part and the insecurity and self-doubt part. It's sort of simple advice, but it would have made a big difference to me if someone had told me that, I think.
Just because you're afraid doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
I'm so interested in the theater keeps coming up for a number of us, and I guess I'm going to try to sort of push this into one thought as best I can. But something about speaking to people who do love, to young people who love the theater, who that feels like their way in. And I think for a number of us, it was the way in. And for me, it was for a long time. I don't think I even thought about anything else. But to feel like the theater, back to your first question of when did you sort of feel, or when do you feel like maybe you are going to have a career in this? I still am I'm moved, but I'm also relieved when someone recognizes me from doing a play. Because there is a part of it that it does feel like these kind of sand sculptures that in the doing of a play, I sometimes, it feels like a fever dream. Like, did it actually happen? Did anyone witness the work? Did this, am I on the planet? did this thing? So just for people who love the theater, but also because no one is going into the theater to make money, to make a living, to feel like you can make a living doing theater. You can make a living then going into the other parts of the business, and that you don't have to choose. I wish someone had helped me sort of navigate that a little better, because I think I felt like it was one or the other. And then I also felt like I was abandoning the theater if I went to Los Angeles and if I did try to make money, and it was confusing. So I'm just, to the theater kids out there.
Yeah, and I love that you said that. And I did a workshop of a new play last week, and I hadn't done a workshop. I hadn't been in a room with other artists making in that way in over 2 years. And I cried like tears of joy every single day, because it just felt so good to be co-creating. And yeah, it was a sand structure. No one will ever see it, but I've done some amazing work this year, but that may have been my favorite thing, because it was so collaborative. I mean, that's really the magic of theater to me, is there's something so deeply collaborative about it.
I think the advice I grew up in a family I have 4 siblings, and my parents were scientists and teachers, and attention was hard to come by unless you were a good girl. So I think my advice to my younger self, and anyone who wants to take it, is to stop pleasing and get into trouble, and stop keeping the peace. Because I was a peacekeeper thinking that was going to keep everything in balance, right? But it doesn't. It just, makes you almost completely useless in the middle of a hostile or adverse environment. So if I could go back to her, I would say, first of all, stop trying to please everybody and get into some good trouble, as John Lewis would say, and choose yourself. That's not selfishness to decide you're going to put yourself first. You need to be first. That's self-respect. That's building your esteem of yourself. So that's the advice I would give my younger self, for sure.
That's usually the same advice I would give myself, is choose yourself. Because you said it, though I'm not going to say it, but that is usually the advice that I would give myself. But I would also probably say to my younger self, the American school system is bullshit. Excuse me, wait, let me, okay, I'm gonna say that one more time, wait. The American school system is bullcrap, but education is everything.
Yeah, for sure.
And to say that in a way that says, as soon as you can, start curating your curriculum, your own curriculum, towards exactly who you are and what you want to be a part of. Because the reality is, the entry fee into most of these spaces is accountability. Can you actually do what you said you could do? Do you know exactly what you said it is that you know? So to my younger self, I would say, don't take everybody else's word as if it's bond or as if it's law. You will learn to find your own truth barometer and follow that.
I think that's really beautiful. And to jump on that is, I think it's important to say that it's also all right if you don't know what you want. And it's a journey, and you might think you're going to do one thing and then that changes. And it's kind of bizarre that we feel like we're meant to have this like one career. Yeah, give yourself a break on that. And if you are lucky enough to know what you want to do that strongly, then don't give up on it. Like, we can be so discouraged with the rejection. I know that, my gosh, I found it really hard. I found the rejection really hard. But there are like ways to make your own work. Like, I did stand up for 2 years because I wasn't getting the part for any auditions. So I just started writing comedy, and then a comedian saw me perform and he wrote me a part in his pilot. And then I was able to get seen for like comedies on screen for British TV. And, you know, so use the rejection to get fire and to start making your own work. That's what I would say.
Did anyone else not answer? Anyone else have any?
I think my younger self was far, I don't know. I think my younger self needs to talk to me now. I think when I was young, I was quite fearless, or I certainly didn't. I don't know what I was thinking about, to be honest. I think when I was young, I was just kind of like, oh, I'm going to do this. I was a bit, there's a word I don't want to say, but I didn't necessarily realize I needed direction per se in that way. And then, you know, life kind of happened in its own way and sobered me. There were just things that happened in my life, losses that happened. But I mean, I will say, like, for younger me to older me, I don't know. Like, you really don't know. You know, we're all kind of just thinking, but you don't know, and life happens, and learning, and I don't know. I don't have that much to say to young me. I'm trying to think. Maybe I would tell you, you know what I would tell young me? That the world is really big and there are amazing people. I will say, and like, it's quite a journey, and it's not going to be like what you think. Nothing in my life is what I thought. Everything I planned is like, it's not necessarily what I planned, but that's part of the beauty of life. So, you know, like, maybe I'd say it's not going to go like that. It's not going to go like that, but it doesn't mean that it won't go better. You know what I mean? It may go, it could go better than what you can even believe.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine.
And it's good, like, let go.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, release expectation.
Really, yes, yeah. But then kind of, yes.
Just so you know, Meryl Streep's gonna fall in love with you.
Right.
Release expectation. Trust me, great shit's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I want to piggyback on something that Angelica said, which my father would say this to me all the time, that experience is not the best teacher. Get your education. And so when you said, you know, curate your education to what you think you'll need, that just resonated with me, because I think that's so important, especially if you're an actor. If you can get training, if you can be educated in a curriculum in a school environment, get it, take it, use it. You're gonna need it. I mean, experience is important, but maybe it won't be the best teacher for where you need to go.
I love that. And I want to say, keep learning. You know, that's a big one for me, is keep on learning new things, find new stuff that you don't know that's scary to learn. I'm learning to be a volunteer fire person right now. And it's, it's kicking my ass emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And it feels like it's so not what I expected to, like, it's growing me in ways I didn't expect. And thank you, Alexandra, for saying like, it's okay to be afraid, because I'm really afraid. And, you know, I love learning new things, and I want to keep beginner's mind. That's really what I heard you say, Angelica, is like, keep beginner's mind throughout your whole life. I think it makes you a better artist, but I also think it makes you a better human.
Can I adjust one thing? I do want to say this. Everyone's journey is different. So my life wasn't like I planned, but there are other people whose life is. So it's like you can't look, maybe it's like you can't look at someone else's life or journey or career or success or whatever and compare it to your own. It's an individual journey. You can learn from theirs, but you just don't have to compare it. Because I do have friends who were like they want, and that did happen, and that happens, and that's, you know what I mean. So it's just it's life is it's like a thumbprint. It's really, or a fingerprint. Every finger's different. Right?
Yeah.
I love the expression. You're the only entry of Regina in the dictionary. Like, there is no other Regina, there's no other Angelica, there's no other Alexandra, there's no other Karen, there's no, like, we are all deeply unique, and our paths will be deeply unique. And it is so dangerous, particularly in our world of social media, to compare it. It's so not healthy for our
Comparison is the thief of joy. That's first of all, comparison is a thief of joy. Secondly, I know that there's a lot of things out there in social media. There's a lot of negativity. If you're looking for a negative review, you will find it. What I know is, though, stick to the love, the people who support and love you and love the things that you're doing. And I just say that because, like, I've seen folks, and this has happened to me lately, where I'm busy. I'm really, really busy. And so sometimes I'm not really slowing down and fully taking on the experience of what's happening. Sometimes I'll have fans or certain folks come in front of me. They might be crying. Oh my God, I just love you so much. And the way you did on Pose and this, and I have a tendency to want to push that away, or to not oh, thank you. You know, just try to what have you. But I've learned to be more graceful, to stand in it, because I deserve it for showing up to the call of my dreams. Like, as they say, I deserve that. But also that moment, I think, is something to not overlook. It is the universe affirming to you that, you know, you're doing these things. And I say that to say that. So when folks say things like, Regina, sis, like, you have inspired so many, not only Black girls and women and people around the world, but obviously actors who are constantly trying to be pushed into a space to show Blackness in one form. And you, my dear, have done such a wonderful job at showcasing the spectrum of humanity, but of Blackness. And we need to see that right now. We need to see Blackness and the spectrum of our humanity even more. So your latest role in 9 Perfect Strangers, and seeing the layers of that, but also let's not forget Scary Movie. You know, so it is the spectrum of that, because I feel just as proud as the girl in the movie theater with Scary Movie as I do of the girl in 9 Perfect Strangers. So I just want to make sure that if you don't hold it now, let it sink in later, and all the other people that tell you this, and all the other ladies on the call, like, let's learn to embrace the love that is given to us, because in a world that hates women, I think it just would be to our advantage to embrace the love. That's all I can say.
Thank you so much.
I love that. So I think of love as a superpower. And for our final question, you get to choose between 2. One is, do you have any secret superpowers that nobody else knows about that you want to share? Or how do you use your platform for good? What do you advocate for, and how can we help support you in that?
Well, I use my platform. I tell people I use my platform as a billboard. I don't have the biggest platform or whatever, but I do have one. And sometimes the universe is calling me to say something because it needs to be said. But sometimes I don't have the words. And so I use my platform to highlight other people who do have the words. When we are living in a space where people have the privilege to check out from what's going on, when we have folks like Julius Jones, who, has his life on the line right now, but you got Kyle Rittenhouse in the middle of America, you see white supremacy at work. And unfortunately for me, too many white people are silent who have large platforms. And unfortunately, people don't recognize that's why the stuff continues to go, because not enough white people these folks don't care about the Black Lives Matter protests and organizations and what we say, and they trying to call us terrorists. They do care about their white networks and affiliations and things like that. So my thing is, too many white people are being silent on this. So what can folks do? Listen, I got about almost 500,000 followers on my Instagram. That's not a lot. But some white women, I like Hillary Swank. Let me take over her Instagram for a day. And I brought so many voices onto her IG to talk about bringing opportunities to marginalized communities. So I just would say, use your platform the best way you know how. And if it ain't your own voice, you can certainly put other voices on your platform. But as well as, let's not check out. We know entertainment is so important, especially during COVID and during all these things, for us to be able to laugh, be able to cathartically cry. But we also need to make sure that we tap into a very real space, that when we leave the theater, we feel changed, to change real life, to change things in real life.
I'd like to just speak about that as well, because I feel like I think representation is key, and that's how I think I'm turning up, using my platform to have a voice and do the thing I'm good at, which is representing the human condition. Having the courage to be vulnerable and to show it to the most truthful degree in roles that are not stereotypes or two-dimensional in any way, that doesn't show my community in a negative light. I think all of that contributes massively, because that's what I feel I'm so inspired by when I'm watching TV or in the media, is seeing that.
I first of all, I want to say thank you again, but I want to say that, I feel like as we're in a really perilous time, for on so many levels, that of injustice, against we have women's rights and their right to abortion that's on the line. We have white supremacy, we have racism that's always existed. We have LGBTQ, we have young girls who are being so influenced by social media before their brains have even developed. We have poverty, we have education, we have we have so many issues, right? There's that, and that's just the broadest generalization that I've made. And everything means something different to different people for whatever. But I do think it's imperative that we show up somehow in whatever. Some people, there's the parable of the talents. If you've got 2 things you can offer and you've got 10, then offer them. For me, I mean, I certainly have a lot of organizations that I support that I think are incredibly important, even if it's not necessarily public. Being able to financially help people where maybe I don't know the work or can't do the work to support and say, someone comes to me and says, I can use you here where I could show up there. Being able to go behind the camera and employ people and tell stories that are amazing, that might help change a point of view and broaden the lens through which those people see life. But then there's the reality of really accepting where we are, to say, we got rotten people around right now. And how do we use our voice to not replace them with the people we want, but the people who are right? That, like, where can we objectively say, like, public education should be great. If we don't have good public schools, then that's in all communities. That's in obviously urban communities, but that's in poor white communities, because if they're not educated, then they become a part of the problem. And that's anybody who's not educated. If you can't travel, if you can't learn to see this person's not your enemy and this person's not responsible for your source, right? So this person isn't why. And it's so easy to, at this juncture in life, to have people believe in untruths about another group of people that may not have experienced. And that's what we get to do with art. We get to do it with the stories we tell, with the people we play, with the humanity that we say, oh, normally I'd be like, that person's rotten. But what slice of humanity can I show that another person can go, ooh, they're like me though. And I see a piece of me. And so it shows up differently for me in different ways. But I do feel that as we are blessed to be in positions to do something, that we have to do something.
I want to agree with Regina on that, just acknowledge that truth. I think we do have the benefit of this extraordinary platform from working in film and television and theater. And it is disheartening to me to see that so many of us in society have decided to grasp onto this separateness, this divisiveness, when we have so much more common ground. So I'm choosing to use my platform to explore common ground, to link up arms with people to tell a different story. And one of the things that moves me, and I have to harken back to COVID, because my COVID experience was so transformational for me, because along with the low level anxiety of, what is this virus going to do? We witnessed this extraordinary moment of social unrest. And when I went back to work on the morning show in October of 2020, I had all of this rage. I was infuriated. I looked around me, and there's diversity on the set of the morning show, but I looked at all of my actors on the show, my white allies, my white advocates, and I was like, we've got to tell a different story. And in order for me to make good use of that anger and rage, I knew I had to be constructive. I knew I had to get in there and link up arms with them, because the reflection of that social unrest was that everybody came together and said, we have to do something different. And so that's been what has been transformational for me. It's been very powerful. It's been empowering to start to use my voice, to raise it up. I've been one of those people that have been silent in the past when I see my trans sisters going through it, and I see Asian American women going through it, and to quietly tell them I support them, but not raise my voice and ask other people to stand on common ground. So I think that's important for me as I explore what this platform can look like. A true exploration means raising my voice.
I love that's a very strong place to end, which is use your voice and raise your voice. We have a couple minutes left. Does Lily, Alexander, do you want to add anything else?
When you asked the initial questions, what is, if you have a superpower, and I would say, my superpower is certainly being a woman, but also being an intense woman. It was something that I feel like growing up and in my adolescence and in my 20s, I often had people saying, oh, I feel intimidated by you. I feel like, and then it sort of started to shift. And someone said to me recently, I just have no interest in talking about the weather with you. And it was like the greatest compliment. And and then I was sitting with an actor that I'm working with, and we were sort of talking about, because we're talking about parenting and this idea of intensity. And he said, I don't think of you as intense. I think of you as full of intent. And it was so, it hit me in such a remarkable place. And I have all these daughters now. I always thought I would have sons, and I have all these daughters, and watching them just move into their beautiful intensity as young women is something that it is a superpower, and just that idea of being full of intent is something to really be proud of.
I just want to say to you, Lily, that translates into your acting too. I think you're a fantastic, intentional, beautiful actress. I love you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel the same way about all of you. Thank you.
After Underground, when I met you, I was like, well, I'm scared of her. That's what place you were in the role. I saw it. I was like, oh, there she is. but that says something when you see someone and you see them in person and you're like, oh, because you believe it that much. So, it is true.
Oh man, agreed. Well, I think that's a beautiful place to end. Thank you all for having this beautiful, beautiful, magical conversation. May you all and everyone watching go forward intensely and full of intent, and not be afraid of that ever, and enjoy the rest of the Power Women Summit.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Power Women Summits Inside the Writers' Room. I'm Jennifer Moss, TV reporter for The Wrap, and I am excited to be here speaking with some of Hollywood's top writers. So let's bring them out now. Amy Aniobi is a writer, director, and producer best known for her work on the NAACP award-winning Emmy-nominated HBO comedy series Insecure. Aniobi is also the founder of production company Super Special, the talent incubator Tribe, and is passionate about mentoring emerging writers. In 2021, Rebecca Sonnenschein received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Writer in a Drama Series for her episode of The Boys entitled What I Know, as well as a nomination for an executive producer for Outstanding Drama Series. She is currently the executive producer and showrunner for the upcoming Netflix series Archive 81. Gloria Calderon-Kellett is well known as the executive producer, co-creator, co-showrunner, director, and actress on the critically acclaimed sitcom One Day at a Time. Currently, she serves as the writer and creator on the Amazon Prime original series With Love, premiering on December 17th. This is the first of 4 series projects in an overall deal between Gloria and Amazon Studios. Jacqueline Moore is an award-winning trans writer and showrunner behind titles like Netflix's Dear White People and HBO Max's Love Life. Up next, Moore will serve as an executive producer on Peacock's reboot of Queer as Folk. Additionally, Moore writes about trans issues, masculinity, and politics for GQ magazine. Prior to her TV writing career, Moore spent 10 years doing sex work to finance her dreams of storytelling and continues to advocate for that community. Sarah Goodman is a writer, creator, executive producer, and showrunner of the Amazon Prime Video original series, I Know What You Did Last Summer, based on the iconic 90s film and 1973 book of the same name. Goodman is currently under an overall deal at Sony Pictures Television, where she is developing a new iteration of the 1999 film Cruel Intentions as a series for IMDb TV, where she will serve as both co-writer and co-executive producer. Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies. It's wonderful to have you here.
I have so many fun shows to look forward to.
I know.
I feel like you guys are way, you should not slum.
No, what are you talking about? Stop that imposter syndrome right now.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Cruel Intentions, iconic.
So obviously we have so much to talk about, but I want to start with an important question, which I'm sure our audience cares about because we have such amazing talent here to give us the answer, which is a lot of our audience members are young women looking to become TV writers. Can each of you kind of go through how you broke into the writer's room? Because I'm sure we have a lot of different stories here. Let's start with Jacqueline.
Sure. I went to NYU, studied playwriting, wrote a lot of plays that nobody read, produced them off to the power of like 30 Broadway. I tried to do anything I could to get people to read my work. I did stand-up comedy. I produced my own plays. I cold emailed and sent scripts and it didn't work. And then I randomly created a Twitter account with a friend of mine while inebriated, and that Twitter account blew up kind of overnight and was written up in Variety and Hollywood Reporter and New York Times. And suddenly agencies were like, hey, do you have scripts? And I was like, yes, they're in your spam folders. And but I was signed within like 6 weeks of starting that account and staffed on a show within 6 months of that, and have been working and staffing ever since. And yes, I was able to quit my, as was referred to in the introduction, my other night job. So it was all great.
Rebecca?
I went to UCLA film school as an undergraduate. And then after that, I did a lot of like bumping around Hollywood. I did like development work and as an assistant, and eventually I won a Nickel Fellowship, which kind of started my writing career. So I that's how I sort of got an agent, and I actually worked in film for quite some time until I realized that I just couldn't make a living, especially in independent film. I was like producing and writing small features, and so I was lucky enough to get a job on The Vampire Diaries for Julie Platt, and I ended up staying on that show for 5 years, and that's sort of what launched me into TV.
Hey guys, I also went to UCLA for grad school. I did the screenwriting program. My parents were like, when you graduate with your MFA, you get your sign-on bonus at your first job as an executive. And I was like, no, it's a writing program. I'm going to be a bottom feeder for a while. And I took a year off after grad school. Everything I wrote in grad school was shit. But I believe in the idea that like 10,000 hours, quantity leads to quality. So I won a screenwriting competition that gave me enough money to survive for about 9 months. So it wasn't a full year, it was 9 months that I took off after school and was writing nonstop, and was just trying to like get better and better and better. And I think the breakthrough for me was not only, I applied to all the fellowships, all the diversity programs, was categorically rejected from every single one. And I was like, this will never work out for me. But I realized I needed to be an assistant. And so I got an assistant job. And I think that plus writing for a web series called Awkward Black Girl they happened around the same time. And that kind of catapulted me in tandem. because I was working on Happy Endings as an assistant to like 16 of the funniest people in the world in this writer's room. And then by night was my night job was writing for a web series. And that web series went bonkers on YouTube. So the two things together kind of led to me getting an agent and getting staffed.
I kind of ended up as a director's assistant, and a writer walked off the project that we were working on, and he did not like to write by himself. So my job was to sit with him while he wrote, which that's what he would say was my job. You shall remain nameless. So we ended up writing that script together, during which I also kind of accidentally got pregnant with my husband, but not with that director. This is a crazy story. Anyway, so I realized I didn't want to work for that asshole, and I didn't want to be married to my very kind ex-husband, and I left both of them and just started writing movies. And I got an agent very quickly, and realized pretty quickly that movies were not my jam, that I love characters, and that's where TV was. And so I wrote a pilot that got produced, and the person I was working for signed me up for the showrunner training program at the Writers Guild, where I sat next to Josh Safran, who was about to run Gossip Girl. And he said to me, "I think you should come work on the show." And you have a bad, sick sense of humor. And so I did. And I ended up, I say that was the highest paid internship I ever had. I really learned how to make television during that time, and ended up running the final season. And I realized writers were my people. Like I thought no one was my people before then. So.
And Gloria.
Woo, these are also good and inspiring. I wanted to be a storyteller. I didn't know what that meant growing up in, Beaverton, Oregon, the daughter of immigrants, right? So when I moved to LA, and I went to Loyola Marymount, and I was like, I want to be an actress, and I got an agent, and every part was gangbanger's girlfriend or gangbanger's sister. It was some version of, Julie, what are you doing here? I mean, it was like, which I didn't book. It was so sad. And I was like, is this what people think we are? Like, I gotta like hold the pen, I guess. Like, I cannot go to another audition where I'm like in chola makeup. Like, I can't do it. So I started to teach myself. I went to the library. My mother was a big lover of libraries as a free way to get information. And I checked out every book I could. And I started writing plays, and I would put plays up. And then I was like, I'm going to go to grad school and learn about playwriting. And when I was in England, I won a bunch of playwriting awards. And then when I came back here, I just put up shows in 99-seat theaters, black box, on like a Wednesday when they were dark, at the lip of the stage, because the back of the stage had somebody else's set. And I would just cast, direct, produce. My husband, my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, would draw the flyers. I would go to all my favorite charities. Like, it was just hustle, because nobody reads you. Nobody, it's true, right? And then thankfully people came and saw those shows. And that's how I got my agent, my manager, and staffed on my first show. And all of it was the hustle of putting up those plays and trying to correct, not just Latina, but roles for women were like, bad. Like, look back to the 90s, it was not great for us, right? Like, across the board. So I think I did like all women monologue shows, all gender, like I just went for it, trying to put out real voices. And I think people were like, oh, we should pay attention to this. So that's how it all started.
Well, thank you guys. We obviously have several different paths to the writer's room for each of you. So now I kind of want to ask about what unifying things there might be here, because all different projects still have sometimes the same environment or similar environments, or similar problems people face, or similar joys of being in a writer's room. So I wanted to start with, if you guys can say what maybe the biggest common misconception about working on TV or a writer in TV or being in a writer's room is for those of the people watching who want to pursue this path and maybe aren't, because they're not on the inside, don't know what the job realistically entails, what they need to do, and what kind of it's all about. So whoever would like to start with that.
Misconceptions. I'll start with something that just took me years to figure out, which was, I thought, because nobody, I think many of us maybe, but I definitely came up when it was mostly old white guys. I mean, I know it's still mostly old white guys, but there's nobody there that's like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do this. Like, you're like, what? And some rooms, the first show I was on, they were like, don't talk so much. Like, and some rooms, it's like the writer's assistants can talk. Like, you're trying to figure out what it is. And the job of showrunner is really interesting because there are talented writers that are not good managers of people. So I've been in rooms where the showrunners were awesome. And I've been in rooms where the showrunner was like, I don't know what he's thinking and I don't know what I'm trying to pitch to. I don't know. So I think the job is really to diagnose, what does the showrunner need to make this show? I think I wasted a lot of time and energy being like, oh my God, do they like me? Do they hate me? Oh my God, I pitched this thing and nobody laughed. Am I going to be escorted out of the building? Am I a fraud? And I think it's not about that. Nobody cares. They have a problem that needs solving, solve the problem. So my job is to say, what is in this show? What is he trying to get to? And ask questions. Now, it was interesting, since being a showrunner, I've now consulted on shows, and I'm so much better on staff now because I know the job better. I'm like, do you want this? Are you looking for this? Is this what you want? And then pitch. And I feel that if he hates something, I don't care. I thought about it 5 seconds ago. It's a cheap idea. I'll come up with another one, right? Like, I take it so much less, it's not personal. And I think, especially when you're women and you're like, when you're entering these spaces and you already feel like, this is I'm breathing rarefied air. Oh, I just should be grateful to be here. Oh, we can't the job is just pitch. The job is make it easier for them. And we walk in with so much more stuff because we're trying to prove our worth. We're trying to make it easier for those that come after us. We walk in with all this stuff. And I think ultimately it's just help the showrunner solve the problem.
I think that's absolutely right. And I was actually kind of a cousin of that. Is I think a lot of times the other side of new writers is coming in and trying to prove themselves and trying to be like, I'm brilliant. Like, let me show you how smart I am and how good I am at this. And like, I think it took a minute to realize that, like, to Gloria's point, like, the job is not to make the best show you can make. The job is to make the best show the showrunner wants to make. And so the number of times where, you just end up wasting time because people are like, well, that's not good. Shouldn't it be like this? And you're like, doesn't matter, not your show. Like, at the end of the day, like, if it sucks, nobody's going to look at the staff writer and be like, you really fucked it up. Like, and if it's great, then great, everybody gets the credit. But like, ideally, we all know that that's not always true, but ideally everybody gets the credit. Yeah, I think recognizing that, like, it doesn't always have to be like, I think sometimes people come in and there's almost like we're all a theater company vibe to it, where it's like, we're going to put on the best show. And it's like, it's kind of that, but it's also a little bit like joining like storytelling army or something, where you're like also trying to like, just please like the person who's running things and like make it better for what they want to do. I don't know if that makes sense.
Definitely.
I think there's a lot of listening. I think a lot of people come in, as Jacqueline and Gloria both said, like wanting to prove themselves or with ideas, and they don't listen to what other people are saying. They're coming up with their own ideas the whole time. And a lot of it really has to do, I think, with listening to what's landing and what's working, and being able to kind of hear what other people are saying and go from there, like have a flexibility with your own thought process to recognize other people's really good ideas. Because a lot of times I think that's what people can't hear, is that even if someone says something differently or doesn't make sense at the beginning, to be able to really hear what other people are saying and see what happens to a story from there. I think that's a hard thing that people don't teach you or tell you a lot.
Yeah, I was actually leaning towards a similar response that maybe combines these, in that like the job requires, I think a misconception is that if I can write good, I'll be good in a room. And the job requires a lot of social intelligence that I did not realize. And I remembered coming home from work so often as a staff writer and being like fucking exhausted. And I'm like, why am I so tired? I was just sitting all day. But it's because you're doing the math of like, they responded to this. Okay, so now I need to do this. Oh, they just said my pitch. Okay, well, now I'm not going to say this. Oh, I said something, I think it annoyed them. Okay, now I need to. And you're doing all of this mental gymnastics around how to be a person. I think you can be the best writer in the world, but if you're not self-aware, you're going to struggle in a room. And so a lot of it is like being able to have the social intelligence to, the word phrase I want to say is know your place, which sounds so, but to know your role, know what your strengths are. Don't flex, just be the thing that you are really good at. Don't try and flex and be a jack of all trades. Like just have the social intelligence to know your role.
I would also say, just in a different perspective, is that I think there's a misconception that it's like you guys tell the stories and then it goes off and somebody else makes it. And I think it's really important to have some sort of knowledge of production or how these things are made as you're writing in a writer's room, because otherwise you're wild pitching stuff and you're like, I can't do that. And that is something that not everybody comes to the job with, and so, if you can educate yourself about production and what it means to shoot a scene, and like if you write a scene with 8 people, that's a lot different than a scene with 2 people. Can you write it with 2 people? So those are kind of, there's a practical side of writing, like being in a writer's room, that it's not divorced from production. Even if kind of the current model is to not always be in production while you're in the writer's room, it's going to get there. So if you can like find someone who can help teach you or just educate yourself about what production is and how stories translate, I think it helps your pitching and it helps your sense of storytelling within. I know it's kind of boring to think about parameters, but you'll make better television and pitch better stories if you kind of understand how this gets made.
No, Rebecca, that makes a lot of sense, especially because you came from a show where they made a whale and blew it up, and that starts in the writer's room and definitely carries over into production.
Yeah.
So we've touched a lot on showrunners here and the importance of that person. And we have showrunners on this panel. So I wanted to ask, what is something when you became a showrunner that you decided you were going to do differently from a writer's room you were in before where you weren't a showrunner? And for those of you who are not yet showrunners, what you would love a showrunner to know, just in general, a showrunner of any show, about being the writer in the room still, and what you'd want to see in your boss.
I think honestly, like the biggest thing was that there's like a humane way to do this, and like treating people like people goes a long way, and like not, bending over to a hierarchy at all times. Like I definitely was somebody who, on Queer as Folk, we have all 3 of our writer's assistant, our script coordinator, and our showrunner's assistant all got half a script in an 8-episode order. Like, and that like goes a long way to like help pay shit forward, and not just, I just feel like there are a lot of people who, it's like people who are traumatized recreate systems of trauma and abuse because that's what they went through. As a trans woman who went to an all-boy Catholic high school, I can't imagine what that would be like. But but no, I think trying to break out of those patterns and be like, hey, you know what? Like, you don't need to be here till 3 a.m. every night. Like, that's not to say that like once in a while there's not an emergency where the network throws something out the night before you go into production and you're like, oh God, we have to redo the whole thing. We're going to be here all night. That's fine. But there are a lot of people who run shows where that's just like standard operating procedure. It's just like, no, I own your time. And like, I'm a big believer in, on both of the shows, I co-ran both Queer as Folk and Dear White People with Justin this last season, and Justin Simeon, who's a genius. But and in both cases, I'm a big believer in like, hey, do you have a meeting? Like, if are you a writer who has like a development? Like, go take your meeting. Like, go. Like, I don't. These shows come and go, and we're all living under this like short orders and 20 weeks and whatever. Like, I think it's kind of egomaniacal the way some showrunners like try to be like, no, I own your time now for the next, like, these next 5 months are mine. And it's like, they don't have to be.
Hard agree with Jacqueline. Yeah, day one, I kind of do a speech where it's like, hey, there is something important to you. Maybe it's your kid, maybe it's your parent, maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's your dog. If there is something that is important to you and you need to go do that thing, go do that thing. Tell me about it so I know, but go do that thing. Because I promise you, if my kid has a 2 o'clock show, I'm going and then I'm gonna come back, right? Just when we're here, let's be focused. I'm not gonna fuck around with, oh, can we swear? Is that okay? Sorry, writer's room.
I've been doing it, so.
I have been too. Your media training is wonderful, Gloria, because you were the only one of us to ask if you could.
Yeah.
But it's I feel like if you let people, I remember One Day at a Time, the last season, One Day at a Time, we had a writer whose best friend was going through chemo. And it was really important to her to go with her friend to each of those appointments. She got to go to all those appointments. And I'll tell you, when she was with us, boy, was she with us and so grateful and worked so hard. And I also don't screw around with YouTube videos. And I come in with a very clear path because I like my husband, he cute. I like my kids, they nice. I like my parents, they live across the street because I'm real Latina. And I want to go home and live my life. And I want you to live your life so you can come back and tell me great stories. So day one, you get to go to stuff. Don't abuse me, but you get to go to stuff. Yeah. And if you want to be a part of any aspect of this show running, if you want to listen to calls, if you want to be on note sessions, if you want to be a part of casting, if you want to be in the edit bay with me, you are allowed. So that if this should also not be privileged information. I was in rooms where the showrunner like kept everything secret from us, and we were just there to be like the monkeys that gave him ideas, and then he never showed us anything. And this shouldn't be privileged information. If we're really doing this work, we want to be building future showrunners. So that's also a thing that I've seen, and it works. It works. These people are now all crushing, So those are two big things. I hard agree with Jacqueline.
I agree. I mean, as the number 2 on Insecure, I will say I've been blessed to have amazing bosses like Hillary Winston, Jonathan Groff, and Prentice Penny on Insecure, who are such people and want you to have a life and like want you to go out and like bring back stories to the room, believe in like, oh, you have a thing, go do it. And I've also, I think that's the best way that you get great writers who feel safe. And by being safe, you're allowed to be vulnerable. Like, I've been to therapy, can you tell? It's like by being vulnerable, you give better story. I know that there are environments that have created shows that we love that have toxic rooms, but I'm like, it's not necessary. I just couldn't agree more with what they both said. I just think that that's the key, is to be a person and treat your writers like people.
I agree too. I think it's also like you have to make it safe. Everybody has to be able to say things that are wrong and that there's forgiveness and that there's, I think it has to feel like it's safe to say whatever it is you need to say in that room. And that, I worked for a showrunner who, the minute someone would go to the bathroom, he would shit talk them. And it was one of the worst experiences I've ever had, because you knew that you were never safe in that room. I mean, no one was going to be immune to that. And I think it's really important to never, ever do things like that about anyone who's in that room, and to make sure that everybody understands that like what goes on in there is sacred. And because what does happen is you don't want a theater group, but you are coming in with vulnerability and you're coming in with things that like feel really stupid, and that's your family during that time. And I think it's really important for everybody to know that that's whatever they say in there is okay. Someone else could get pissed off, but that ultimately that's not going on behind their back. and that everybody's on the same team.
And I'll just say, like, what the one thing that I really tried to do was listen to people's pitches, because I didn't want to, like, and I asked everybody else to do that too. Like, don't hear a pitch and then move on to another one. Like, let's all consider everything that people say. Not to say that we'll do it or that it's even a good pitch, but sometimes what you may want to say no to something right away, but if you just sit with it and sort of like discuss it within reason, I also don't want to like slow us down, but I do want everybody to like hear each other and like talk about the pitches, so that we're not, that I as a showrunner, I'm not like, that's not how I think it should be. I just try to listen, just take a beat and really listen to what people are saying and have everybody else sort of listen to.
Well, thank you guys for all of that. I'm now going to shift to some more individual questions because everyone has some very exciting personal projects to talk about. Jacqueline, I want to start with you and the Queer as Folk reboot, which is eagerly anticipated, very exciting. I want to know what you plan on updating, what you plan on changing. Obviously, the world we live in is different than the world where the original Queer as Folk aired. So what can we expect? What can fans of the original know that will still be there? And what are you incorporating?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I actually think, like, in some ways the world is, I mean, the world obviously changed, but in some ways it's like the world was always like this. It's just like when it came time to put it on TV, it was like, no, let's just focus on like the 4 white gay guys. And that was still revolutionary and, like, important for its time. I'm not only a little shade, not a lot of shade. But I would say our reboot is more of a spiritual successor. It's I'm a big believer. I for all my joking about not being a theater group, I also have like a Sondheim knuckle tattoo, which is like my gender and sexuality sort of summed up. And so I'm a big believer in, like, I'm a theater person. I'm a big believer in the power of revivals and of recontextualizing old stories and ideas for a modern audience and learning new things from them. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what we're doing. It's all new characters. It's set in New Orleans, which is very different, which is where I am right now, but it's very different. Being queer in New Orleans is very different than being queer in LA or being queer in New York. It's, you're sort of on what, as a trans woman, it's like I would say that New Orleans is more welcoming than Los Angeles and New York to trans women, while at the same time being more hostile to us. Like, it's like the extremes sort of exist, where it's like the people who are welcoming are so welcoming, but it lives next door to like the South and conservative Christian, people who really, like didn't want to let me out of their Uber because they were trying to save my soul. So like, it's just, it's a very specific kind of queerness that we're trying to tap into. And on top of that, it's like obviously like a much more diverse cast, much more diverse stories. Like, trans people exist in this version, which is great. It's very fun. And I think one of the biggest things is, I'm a big believer in sort of allowing the dignity of messiness to all sorts of types of characters. And I think we've allowed, for a really long time, white guys have been allowed to be Don Draper or Walter White. And then I feel like we've gotten to a point where, like, white women for a while have gotten to be, Nurse Jackie or United States of Tara, or Kevin Can Fuck Himself, Annie Murphy on that show, or, like, whatever. Like, we've gotten to the point where we can have like kind of complicated shades of gray white women. I would say in the last couple of years, like, when Dear White People started, it was like Us and Insecure and like Blackish. And like, that was, the television landscape is very different now. And like, there are a lot more different kinds of Black stories being told, which is amazing. But when it comes to specifically, and obviously I'm biased, but when it comes to trans people, we're still either put upon saints. Like, I love Pose. I'm glad Pose exists. But when Pose is the only thing, it's like, yeah, we're victims of tragedy, or we are serial killers, or we are like, there's not really like and so with all of our characters, but definitely the trans characters too. The goal is to allow that messiness and allow like people to be, you know, people to cheat on their spouses, but have that not mean that like, wow, all trans people cheat on their spouses. Like, you know, or like, I think we just need to move beyond just representation for representation's sake. And it's like, well, what reality are we representing? And I think that's sort of has been our sort of like watchword in the Queer as Folk writers room and now on set. Is just like, let's allow these people the dignity of making mistakes and still being likable, and still being, and not to get into likability as a thing, but still be people we root for, even though they're human.
Thank you for that answer. Amy, we just mentioned Insecure, so I wanted to come to you and talk about what it's like being in a final season writer's room, if you can talk about that, especially on a comedy, a beloved comedy, where, you know, it's still lighthearted in a lot of ways, but a final season is pressure, especially with fans looking for what the end's gonna look like. So what has that been like for you so far?
Yeah, pressure, fuck yeah. It was really challenging, and especially being on from the very beginning, and like, we knew we wanted to do 5 seasons, like Issa had decided that, and really, and I felt that even from having written on Awkward Black Girl, she was very much like, I don't want to overstay my welcome, leave on a high note. And obviously walking into season 5, the pandemic hit, and it was just like, get us the fuck out of here. Like, we were just like, because all our stories come from our lives lived. And here we are in season 5 being like, I remember going to a bar a year and a half ago and meeting a guy I liked. Like, it was like all our stories were like, ah. And so we were like, thank God we're ending. But it became a lot of pressure, not only how do we write this show in the context of where we are as a society, but also like, how do we land this plane? And it kept being a phrase that everyone kept saying in the room, like, we got to land the plane, we got to land the plane. And it was so stressful. And I remember like waking up one morning at 4 a.m. and being like, there's no fucking way to land the plane. And I think we had like a small, just like upper levels writer's room. And I said that to Prentice and Issa, and I was just kind of like, I feel like we're thinking about it wrong. Every single season, we've always said like, the next season writes itself because we've set up all these great things. Surprise, it doesn't write itself. So we used to always say that. So I was like, can we just pretend like there's a season 6? Can we just say, and then in season 6, and they were like, no. And I'm like, but we can't land this plane. So what if we just took off? Like, could we find a way to take off at the end of this season? And then we just jump ship and the plane keeps going. And it kind of unlocked something in the room for us to take that pressure off and just say, what are great stories we can tell now? Like, what are the things that we can say that leave our audiences feeling like we've completed some trajectories, and also that we're setting up new places for these characters who are characters but are real people in our audience's lives. People argue on Sunday nights about like Issa's men, you know? And so I'm like, how do we form a way to just like let them take off and keep living? And that became a really exciting challenge. It was still a challenge, but became really exciting. And seeing it air and seeing how the audience is responding to all of the hard work we did has been really rewarding. Sometimes they're very dismissive in a way that I'm like, wow, if they only knew how many tears I shed. But also it's great to see them be engaged.
Rebecca, The Boys was nominated for an Emmy, and I wanted to know what it's like in a writer's room where you are on a genre show, which has a hard enough time being recognized in award circles. If that then shifts, and talking about pressure, if it shifts anything for you guys in your heads, and if it kind of gets in there, or if it doesn't affect you guys, being Emmy nominated, and what you go into in your next season, and if you feel like you need to look like an Emmy nominated show or change in some way to continue that legacy after that.
Well, The Boys was pretty far behind, in production. So I'm sure it will going forward. But I mean, season 2 premiered, I forget, like in 2020. But we finished it long before that. And so, season 3 had already wrapped by the time the Emmy nominations came out. So I think it's just really a wonderful, I think it's just like, was a great surprise and really, we work so hard to make a show that has something to say, even though it has the trappings of a fun genre show, which it is, but we also had a lot to say about sort of the state of the world. So I don't know if I don't know if there's like pressure, but it's just a real honor, and it's like you want to live up to that. So going forward, yeah, for sure.
And being nominated yourself for the writing, I wanted to know what that kind of felt like to get that nomination, not just for yourself, but to know, like, again, bringing genre into an awards is hard and it's hard to get talked about in that conversation. So what that feels like for people who want to go into a writer's room and pursue that, and maybe never had in their head that I'm ever going to get recognized in that kind of way for that work, but that's what I love to do.
Well, I think, we're living in a time of hundreds of shows on the air. So I don't think you can go into any show or any job thinking I'm going to be recognized for this in an Emmy or an Emmy nomination or any kind of nomination. There's too much out there, and you just don't know. You could be working on something and you're like, this is the greatest thing ever, and then people don't like it. But that doesn't change how you work on a show. I guess the thing is like, regardless of how people respond to it or how it does in the ratings or how critics respond, you must treat every show and every job as something that you're very proud of and that you work very hard at, and you try to bring pieces of yourself, into. And the rest of it is like completely random. That's just chaos theory, It is awesome that genre is taken seriously. But there's just just think of the number of genre shows there are. Like there's so many different kinds, and there's so many of them now. And they don't have to be, on the side anymore. They've been brought into mainstream culture. So yeah, there's like just more opportunities to tell more complex stories in genre now.
Gloria, we talked about final season, which you already had with One Day at a Time, and I want to know after that, life after a final season, and what it's like moving on from a show that was very beloved into new projects, and if that's a struggle, if it's hard for you, letting go of something that was such a big deal and a big part of your life. And kind of what that looks like charting the rest of your career and
yeah, I had that question too. Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, girls. Woo, ladies, let me tell you, it is when you make look, when we make anything, I've done this long enough. When you make anything, there's rooms where you're like, let's read the reviews because it'll be hilarious. Let's read the bad reviews. I mean, when I was on Rules of Engagement, Tom Hertz, the showrunner of that show, brought in the reviews, and there was one review that said everyone working on this show should quit television. So it's like, I'm just used to like, people are gonna take a shit on it, okay? Like, and this One Day at a Time was so personal. It was about my family. It was about the Cuban American experience. It was about my mother and me. And so it was so personal that I was like, Gloria, you just gotta, listen, if you're catching flack, you're close to the target, okay? So like, it's all good. It's all good. So when people loved it so much, it a little ruined me, right? Like I'm like this, no matter, I'm never going to get that much love again. I'm never going to get 100% on Rotten Tomatoes for all, like, now I'm just like, if it's 70, that's good. Like, like, you have to prepare yourself for the fact that you're making something new that you also love. Like, I love the new show. I love it so much. I'm really proud of it. I think that it reflects, One Day at a Time. A multi-cam, you have to really stick with those 6 characters. That's really what that is. It's the play of these people. And so I never really got to extend that much to the rest of my family. So with Love is more of a love story. It's a rom-com, but in a way that we've never seen ourselves centered. All of the people that are the best friends in the dominant culture movie are the center of the story in this. And I really wanted to show my brother, and my brother's not gay in real life. But he and I are very close, and I wanted to show a brother and sister relationship. That was really important to me. I wanted to show, I just felt like after a year and a half of Black and brown bodies consistently in trauma, I wanted to show something that was trauma-free. that was joyful and that was uplifting and that was people thriving. And I wanted to honor all of the queer members of my family who never see themselves as the center of the story. So as the leads, right? So, you know, we have a trans Afro-Latina lead who falls in love and there's no trauma. Spoiler alert. It's all a love story. Like Isis King was like, I just get to be Cameron Diaz. I said, yes, girl. Like Mark Indelicato, who's funny and, you know, brilliant in Hacks, coming in, says funny things, leaves. He's the center of the story. He gets to fall in love and he gets to go through what it is to like bring somebody home for the first time. And is my family going to like it? And I hope they like my new boyfriend. And anybody who came out or all that happened 10 years ago, we are 10 years past that story. And this family's all good with it. Grandma's fine. Everyone's fine. And we just get to center it on love. So I'm trying to focus on like, oh, I get to say a bunch of new stuff that I'm really excited and proud to say. And I'm so happy to have that be the evolution for me as an artist of what I got to do on One Day at a Time and scratch the surface of. And now I get to dig a little bit more deeply. And so I'm trying to focus on that as opposed to focusing on how are they going to receive it, because I'm ruined, right? Like it's so hard. It's so hard. So that's where, so I'm preparing my heart. I'm definitely like, what are they going to get mad at? They're going to get mad at something. Oh, the Latinos are going to be mad at something. And I'm here for the conversation because I do really feel like when these things come up, I get very excited about the conversation. I don't like to back down from it because I think those are important. I think there's such a starvation for representation that, you know, Latinos have been on this land for 500 years. We cannot make up for 500 years of bullshit with one show. So I understand that when you see something and you're like, oh my God, it's gonna be, and it's not everything that's you, it's like a letdown because you're so dying to see yourself. And I think this with all marginalized communities, it's why it's hard to do this work. It's hard because we cannot possibly, right? So let's try to focus on the yummy good stuff. I try to engage with haters and say, here's why I did this, but let's talk about it. Your feelings are valid, but let's talk about it. And let's talk about what's beautiful and amazing about this. And let's try to lift it up and continue to have these conversations because I think they're important and hopefully there will be more as a result. So that's a long answer, but it's a lot. And, you know, just trying to meditate.
Don't make me follow that.
I'll start. Sarah, I'll start with don't worry, we'll get there. I know what you did last summer.
That's what I mean. She's talking about love. She's talking about representation. I'm talking about murder. I'm talking about irredeemable characters.
No, we need it all.
I'm talking about teenagers.
So I know what you did last summer, Cruel Intentions. Sarah, are you just ready to remake all Sarah Michelle Gellar's greatest hits?
I think that Ryan Phillippe heard this and is really mad that you called them Sarah's greatest hits.
We'll take it again.
I'm joking.
But in all honesty, you know, what comes with the idea to revisit projects and in a different way, especially from that time period and the amount of nostalgia that people have for the 90s and those iconic slasher, and I know what I'm going to call Cruel Intentions, brother, sister, lover, sex mind game is genre.
My favorite genre.
Yeah. I was going to say sex mind games is my favorite genre. So I think, you know, first of all, I think they're very different and they're very different adaptations. You know, I have taken a huge amount of shit for I Know What You Did Last Summer not being nostalgic and not being a slasher. It's back to what the novel was, which was a psychological thriller about kids who do something super fucked up. And it's the telltale heart inside of them, and they make tons of bad decisions. So tonally, it's very different from the movie. Cruel Intentions is very similar to the movie in terms of tone because how can you not? Yeah, and also I think there's a time right now where everyone's trying to justify everyone's bad behavior. Like there's People are behaving worse than ever. They are so mean. The amount of just straight up meanness is insane. And so I think instead of trying to justify it, to just go full bore with these characters who have no apologies for it and are just like, we put them in the Greek system in a small college where they think that those stakes matter. And, you know, yeah, they are betting on who's going to fuck who and taking each other down. And I think it's listen, it was originally based on Dangerous Liaisons, which was based on Dangerous Liaisons, which was based on Dangerous Liaisons. And I think it's a timeless story of, sex games and manipulation. What could be better?
So my follow-up for you was actually about source material for your source material. And if you ever deal with people not realizing that these things came from pre-existing things and they're looking for a cookie cutter of something that is already an adaptation.
Yes. That has been a big deal. I mean, a lot of people, I Know What You Did Last Summer was a novel. It was a novel in the 70s. And most people don't know that. And it's not based on the movie. The movie was the only thing they all three have in common is that these kids were partying, they hit someone with a car and kill them. In the book, it's a kid. They leave a kid dead there. And the brother insidiously, infiltrates their lives. It's a very different story than a guy in a raincoat. And I love guys in raincoats. I mean, I've been flashed by them on the streets of Chicago. Guys in raincoats are awesome. But I think making something as a TV show, you have to be able to take the source material and the underlying source material, and you have to be able to look at what's an ongoing story and what is interesting to you, not to every other person who's gonna have an opinion on what you've done and think you fucked it up. But what is interesting to you about that source material, and take that, just like I'm sure Jacqueline's doing with Queer as Folk, is like you have to take what worked and what's interesting to you and what's interesting in our time period, in where we're living, unless you're making a period piece. And I think it's challenging because in a weird way, people are more nostalgic than they've ever been. We live in a society that's so different than it was in the 90s. In the 90s, there were reviews. Now there's just like a barrage of just social media where everyone thinks they know everything about everybody else. And people are more isolated than ever. And I think you have to be true to the time we're living in and know that everyone's going to hate your guts. And luckily, I've lived like that for a long time, so I'm okay with it.
Well, I so appreciate all of your answers. We only have a little bit of time left, so I wanted to know, for our audience who's watching this, do you guys have any last piece of advice? We've talked so much about writers' rooms and breaking in, but do you guys have, I know it's hard and I know there's so much you probably want to say, but maybe one key piece of advice for pursuing this as a career?
Oh, get a writer's group. That would be my advice. Get a writer's group. The thing you learn as you move up is that nobody does this alone. And I think there's sort of this like, you fell in love with your passion of writing alone in your room, writing poetry about people you had crushes on and whatever. So it feels like a solitary activity. But I remember going to my first like network table read and seeing 12 writers banding together to help this showrunner. And I was like, hey, I do it alone. And then I was like, oh, I'm the idiot. So get a writer's group, share your best jokes, give your best material to people you trust, let them give you theirs, accept their notes, give notes. The more you give, especially to people who see your voice clearly, the better your work becomes. So that would be my advice. Don't do it alone. Nobody else does.
That's such good advice. God, I'm torn. There's two little pieces that I'll quickly throw back to back. One is kind of off of Amy's, which is just that like, don't always look up, like look around. Like the people who are at your same level, not broken in, will eventually break in and you'll rise together. People that I ran comedy shows with in the Village, in the back of bars in New York, are now like running SNL. And so like you just it's the people around you as much as it's the people above you. And then the other thing is the only thing you can control is your output. Nothing else. Once you do it, who knows? Some things, people like a script, people don't like a script, the right person reads it, the wrong person, like, doesn't matter. You can't control any of that, but all you can control is like, are you sitting down in front of a keyboard? Are you like sitting down at a whiteboard and breaking a story? Like, just keep making things. You don't know what's going to hit.
I would say be patient. When I talk to young people, what am I, a million? Young people? When I talk to the youth, hey, Gloria, there's such a, I think that Instagram and all of that has placed this rush on people because they're seeing what they think are realities of what's happening out there. And so you get these, 22 to 28-year-olds that are like, oh, I should have a show. I should be will you be my mentor? It's like, whoa. I didn't become a showrunner until I was 41. I didn't direct professionally till I was 43. Like, there are ways to do this job. Be good. Focus on being good. Get good, get better. Focus on, I think there's like this thing that is not about the work. Like, really if this is what you want to do, if you want to be a storyteller, get good at being a storyteller. Read everything you can read about how to write, how to break story, how to deepen your characters, other ways to do it. Watch everything. Study, be a student of the greats. Like, make yourself a better creator and artist, and then it will come. And I think that like, there's just, I see it and I get it, because we all were there. Like, I want to say this thing and I want to do it, but put your head down and do the work of it. It's good. It will come to you if you really focus and put your head down and do the work.
I agree very much with that sentiment, because I think, the wunderkinds get the glory, but like, I think all of us, I didn't even start writing television until I was 40. So, it's like, you have to be honest with yourself. Are you in it for the long haul? Like, there's no time frame that you're owed, or it's kind of random where you find your success. So you have to either commit to like, I'm just going to hang in there, or maybe it's not for you. You could be hanging in there for a very long time. So I always try to find fun in the process, because the outcome you can't control. You cannot control what the outcome of things is. So if you can find the joy in writing or little successes, then that can sustain you. But yeah, expecting something to happen, it will start to turn you bitter, and you don't want that. You wanna have joy in what you're doing. So find ways to find joy.
Oh, I agree with everything everyone said, which is just keep writing. And I think if there's some other job that you think that you'd like to do, go do it. Because I think the only way that you really succeed at this is if it's the only thing that you can do. It is the only thing. And that doing it, like what Rebecca was saying, that doing it actually feeds you too. No matter what the outcome, that you need to keep doing it. Because I think that's the only way through it. And it's not very glamorous. I mean, we all look incredibly glamorous right now. But it's not a very glamorous job, and you really do it. It beats you up sometimes, and you really have to have a strong, grounded sense of that this is what you are, that you are a writer, and this is what you are doing. Is that a downer? Was that a big downer?
No, and actually, I just wanted to double tap on what Sarah's saying, because like literally, even if you go do that other thing, and you're like, fuck, I fucked up. I should have been a writer. It's always here. And now you can write about that thing you went and did. Like everything is story. So go, if you have another path, go pursue that.
Yeah.
And then let writing call you back. It will always be here. So I think what you said is an upper, not a downer.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
yeah.
I agree. And I want to double tap something you said too, because I thought, not to get all newsies about it, like we're a union just for saying so, but you're a writer just for, if you sit down and write, you're a writer. Like that's it. Like that's the act of being a writer, not getting jobs based on it. I would like doing the writing is what makes you a writer.
He was uplifting. Thank you to our panelists so much. Thank you guys for being here. It was a very enlightening conversation. Thank you to our audience members for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of Power Women Summit 2021. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
I've had to do a lot of therapy in order to get to the root to where I could erase the mistaken beliefs that society embedded me. I am enough, and I am worthy.
¿Quién era yo sin la danza? Alguien a quien su hermano tuvo que recoger de Nueva York porque decidió abusar de pastillas para dejar de sentir.
Here's a baby mat, so you do that. And here's a door. Good job. And here's a bench.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daria Overby, Executive Director of Creative Diversity at Starz. We're so excited about this year's Telling Our Stories at the 2021 Power Women Summit. In partnership with the Rap Women, Telling Our Stories film competition is for short films by raising women and gender non-conforming filmmakers of color, highlighting themes relevant to womanhood, community, and representation. These shorts were evaluated by executives at Starz, and the filmmakers that we have here today represent the finalists of the competition. One of these filmmakers will be selected for the $10,000 prize, which will be announced later. All the final films can be found on the RAP website during the summit. Please go and check them out. So we want the audiences to get to know you better. So I wanted to give each of you a few minutes to share about your project. Monami Roy from The Magic Change is not here, but we want to make sure that we give her a shout out before we begin. All right, let's start with Sergio. Tell me about your project. Tell me what inspired you to make this film.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for Sophia staying the work and can't stay with us, but she is very excited because this project is very hard because talk about her and his life, about the sweet dreams and the depression and problem. I think this documentary, no, it's a normal documentary because have so many things personal. It's like open your heart and see inside in the Sophia, because it's very hard talk about the depressions and this situation because Sophia is a dancer and she's an artist. And when you're broken your legs and is a dancer, what happened? You're broken everything. And she needs to come back to her series and fight with us for stay in the new life. Yes. I work with Sophia to co-direction in the documentary, in the cinematographer. I studied cinematographer in Barcelona. And it's very hard to me because when you talk with people, you hear and the people have a problems, have a feelings, have everything, but it's very difficult for the people talk about the our problems. For Sophia, this documentary, it's very difficult because talk about her mom, her family, her everything. I think for me, Sophia, it's very, very hard for talk about everything in this documentary. It's her life. Yes.
Well, I'm glad she has you to step in for her. And just want to make sure that I give a shout out to the film. The film is Azul, and we're sorry that Sophia couldn't be here. I don't know if you know this. Do you know what's next for the film or for you guys as filmmakers?
Well, I work with Sophia in the dance because I am a cinematographer and she is a dancer, and it's two art so many different. But when you work in the art is communication, like a dance, like a painter, everything is communication. We work in the documentary, and the next time we work in other two documentaries about the family, about the dance, similar projects. Because when you need to talk about something, you need to talk about the art or about you.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, good luck to you. We're going to go to the next film, Being Gina, Radha Mehta. How are you?
Doing well, yeah, thank you.
Tell us what inspired you to make this film.
Yeah, so I'm a mother, and the person that I actually featured is this lady named Gina Wassermiller, and she's a parent ally for the state of Washington with Office of Public Defense, as well as for this clinic called First Clinic. And what she does is she helps keep families united. So a lot of times, any mothers that deal with substance abuse, they often get separated from their children within 36 hours of birth. So her main mission is to keep them united by offering them services that they otherwise don't know how to access. And a lot of it is preventative in terms of being able to overcome substance abuse and get on the right path to become the mothers that they've always dreamed to be. Because when I meet with all these mothers, there's no denial in the fact that they are very loving towards their children. And once you separate them, and when kids go into the foster care system, there's a whole series of intergenerational trauma that happens from, just cyclical in terms of, kids that are loved by their mothers. So Yeah, so my film Being Gina is about this lady, specifically Gina Wassermiller, and she's actually united over 1,000 families during her work. And she herself is someone that's overcome substance abuse and had her second child taken away. But she's now a very present mother in all three of her children's lives, and happily married, and lives a very healthy life.
That's amazing. With all this going on in the world, she has that much to give back. Tell us what's next for you as a filmmaker.
Yeah, so Being Gina is actually a film that's part of a social campaign to all the children's home societies throughout the nation, and it actually starts in North Carolina. And I think that they intend to show that as a conversation piece in terms of how we can empathize with parents, especially those parents that are much in need. You know, a lot of times they don't actually have access to homes, and that's the very first thing that actually prevents them being, you know, actually present parents when they're overcoming substance abuse. So it's just a matter of like trying to provide them all the resources possible so that they can succeed, and they just need support, and they just need parental love. And a lot of these parent allies, there's a whole movement going on, a parent ally movement, where parents who come out the other side of this are actually supporting other fellow parents to also come out the other side. And it's a beautiful movement that I think that could take the nation by storm in a way, and that's the point of this film. It's actually, there's a larger film that I've also made as a supplement to this. It's called Parent Ally, and that goes deep into the actual families that have succeeded because of just this parental love from fellow parents.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, going to the next film, Mary Ann and Frank. Jing Tan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Fantastic. Very inspired by everybody today, but want to hear about your inspiration to make this film.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So for Mary Ann Frank, I was interested in the effects of gentrification on senior citizens in the Lower East Side in New York City. I saw that many of them were alone and didn't have kids or relatives that they spoke to. So from 2012 to 2014, many were priced out of their apartments, and there was this sort of mass exodus out of that neighborhood. I felt anxious for their survival because as a child, I grew up with my grandparents, and they were basically my parents. At the same time, my grandparents actually passed away around the same time. And so I felt a lot of grief, and I didn't feel like there were any resources or any stories to kind of talk about that grief. So for this short film, I channeled my observations and my own personal experiences and feelings into the character.
Wow. Tell us what's next for you as a filmmaker, and if you have any other future plans for this film.
Sure. I'm starting to submit the short film to festivals now. And before I made the film, I actually did research and interview senior citizens and talked to counselors at the Center for Complicated Grief at Columbia University. And I also spent time at a funeral home where I got to see death and learn about death in a different way and through a different perspective. So I'll be sharing this short film with all of those folks. For my own career, I'm working on my debut feature called Kid C, which is the friendship about a 10-year-old Chinese immigrant and her best friend, John, an African-American boy, as they try to reclaim a sense of childhood as they deal with mental and emotional abuse. So taking on more of a personal journey for the future.
Wow, congratulations, and kudos to you to be able to tackle these hard subjects. All right, going to the film, tell me about Orange. Robin Noonan-Price, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
I'm glad that you could make it. Tell us about what your inspiration was for this film.
Well, I did not write the film.
Okay.
The film was actually brought to me. And I'm in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and I belong to Women in Film and Video, D.C. And we have a big kind of a seminar every year. This was pre-COVID, and where we bring in industry professionals to come and talk to our members about different types of writing or directing or producing different tracks. And so there was a young woman, Rachel Ahmet, who wrote this film, and she had it read in front of a group of professionals. And they basically said, we don't have any other feedback to give you other than go make this film. Right. So my good friend Jane, who is the executive producer, came running up to me and said, you need to we're going to make this film and you're going to direct it. And I said, okay, let me take a look at the script. And so that's how it got started. And it was, it just was really, I absolutely loved the story. It's a coming of age story for teens, and it's just very sweet.
Fantastic. Is this your first film that you directed?
No, I have directed a few other shorts, and I've done a lot of producing. So I've done more producing than I have directing, but directing is really my my sweet spot where I really want to head towards.
Got it. What's in the near future for you, filmmaker wise?
Filmmaker wise, I did just finish producing a short that we're working on currently, getting into a rough cut. That's called Familiar, and we filmed that in North Carolina this past August. Tell Me About Orange is still on the festival circuit, so I'm really excited about that. We got into the Bentonville Film Festival, and Jane and I were able to travel there in August. So that was really amazing. And we have a couple of features that we're working on that we're trying to get off the ground. So yeah, just a lot of different projects on the horizon. I hope that will take off.
All right, fingers crossed for you. I know what it's like out there. The next film is called The Weight of It, with Olivia Marie Valdez, Einar Solar Fernandez, and Sandra Afonso Rodriguez. Welcome, you guys.
Hello, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Glad you could all make it. All right, which one of you wants to talk about the inspiration to make this film?
Sure, I can take that. So hi, I'm Olivia. Einar and Sandra is calling in from Barcelona. Einar and I are calling in from the jungle in Peru. But we three made this together during our graduate course in Barcelona. Initially, when we got together, the three of us wanted to make a film that was more suspenseful, maybe more entertainment driven. But after kind of going through a bunch of ideas that lacked a lot of meaning, we decided to look within ourselves and find something a little bit deeper that we really wanted to talk about. And in doing so, we realized that a lot of the stories that shaped us as people involved our grandparents. And we really wanted to do something that paid homage to our grandparents and the effect that they've had on our lives. And one story that we told each other that stood out in particular was one about my great grandma Dee. Before she passed away, she had breast cancer twice, and she had to have a mastectomy, and then she had a replacement boob after that. This was terrible for Grandma Dee because Grandma Dee loved her boobs. Oh. And so to get this new fake silicone boob for her was very hard for her to adjust. And I distinctly remember going over to Grandma Dee's house and sitting with Grandma Dee with her new perky boob standing up at attention while she lifted her old original boob onto the recliner arm of the chair. So this image was just striking to me. And as as we reflected on it, we thought of Grandma Dee as this strong, independent, confident woman, despite all of the things she's been through. So we came up with this character, Maria, and our story takes place in one night as Maria is getting ready for bed, and she has the same situation as my Grandma Dee did. And she's kind of learning to look at her body as something that's not just a symbol of trauma, but a symbol of strength and how much she's been through, and therefore a symbol of beauty. So, and then in doing this, we kind of came to some other messages that we really hope come across. We want to desexualize nudity. when we were looking for examples, this is a stop motion animation short film. And so when we were looking at references and Googling older woman natural breast, only things that we didn't want to see were coming up. And we hope that with this film, we're kind of destigmatizing, desexualizing nudity and what it means. And then further, we're talking about older generations in this film, and they have their very own individual lives and are still going through a lot of growth.
Wow. Did either one of your other filmmakers want to speak?
Well, I think, well, yeah, Einar, I don't know. No, I think
Sandra,
Olivia,
step in.
no, I think Olivia said everything really good. But yeah, it's kind of a homage to our grandparents because they were really important in our lives. And yeah, especially, you know, it's Grandma D, like Olivia's great grandma. So it's, I don't know, it was really special because it was something really personal, like for Olivia and also for us, because we could, Einar and me, we could relate to with the story in different ways. So yeah, I don't know, it's it was a special topic.
And now, where do you see yourselves going with this film, or are there other projects down the pipeline?
Yeah, so with this film, we're hoping to keep putting it out there to the festival circuits. We're not quite sure where it lives after that, but maybe with some societies for breast cancer, along those lines, we hope to be able to show other people and kind of have people be inspired by Grandma Dee's story and what she went through. And then as far as like what's next for us, I think we're all hoping that we three will be together again to make another film. But right now, Einar,
Also, we were during the whole process of the project. We got really close. We shared a lot of emotions and stories and everything. So we all three, we hope that in a more near than far away future, we can create our own studio or our own production company or something, and
continue making stories,
and continue making more films and more short films.
Yeah.
So.
And right now, Einar and I are working on a stop motion short film out here in the Amazon. And Sandra, I don't know if you want to talk about what you're up to.
Yeah, I was doing an internship in a stop motion animation studio. And right now I'm doing something different. I'm working on jewelry, but yeah, also looking for jobs also in stop motion, trying to step into the cinema in stop motion. So yeah, working and looking for opportunities at the moment.
That sounds fantastic, because just have your future ahead of you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and to the filmmakers for submitting their impactful projects to this contest. For audiences, please head over and watch these 6 wonderful short films and celebrate Starz telling our stories at the Rap Women Power Women Summit. Congratulations to our winner, The Weight of It. And thank you to all the filmmakers for submitting their films. Please go and check out all of their films at the Rap Women's Summit Marketplace. Everyone have a good day.
Wow, thank you so much. Oh my God, that's unbelievable. I have no words. I'm in shock. That's crazy. Thank you so much to the Rap and to the Power Women Summit for this incredible opportunity. Well, doing cinema and especially stop motion animation has always been my dream. And now here we are with our short film and winning this contest. It's a dream come true. And well, after creating this short film with Olivia and Einar, we created a really strong bond. It was such an amazing experience, all the process. And we have a dream together, and it's to create a stop motion studio together in the future. Probably they will tell you too in their video. But yeah, now with this prize will give us all the energy and the motivation and the confidence to keep creating cinema and having new projects and creating this studio. So really, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much from out here in the jungle.
Yes, oh my God.
Thank you to Starz. Thank you to Rap Women. Thank you to Women's Power Summit. We're so happy.
Yeah, we still don't believe it. It's crazy. We are in a cloud right now. I mean, we're still trying to assimilate everything.
Yeah, it means so much to us that people connected with Maria's story, and we really appreciate that you guys found something meaningful in it as well.
Yes, and as Sandra said, we are planning to invest the prize in create our own studio stop motion company, because since we started all working together, we felt a really good connection and we create a really good friendship. So thank you very much.
And we have so many more stories to tell about real people and their real struggles that we hope people can relate to and love as well. Thank you again so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.